Thank you, members. Staff, gallery. Welcome to the council meeting for Tuesday the 23rd of April, and in doing so I'd like to acknowledge the land we meet on today as the traditional lands of the Kaurna people, and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the custodians of their cultural and heritage beliefs are still as important to the Kaurna people living today. Also read the council pledge. We seek wisdom and understanding as we face the duties of our united task, praying for the peace and prosperity of our cities. Please be seated. We have Councillor Nguyen here. Confirmation of minutes of the ordinary meeting of council is held on Tuesday, March. So we're happy to do so. Confirm in that one. Yep. Oh, sorry, I just get it back. Let me just go back a second. Declaration by members of a conflict of interest. Are there any conflicts of interest to declare tonight? There being none. On to the minutes, and I saw wish to speak to it.
I do not.
Okay, and Councillor Barnett wish to speak to the second. No, any further debate on that? If not, we'll take that as the debate concluded. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Next item is the Mayor's report. It's there for you on page 1 and 2. We have someone wishes to move it. Ms. Carter. Councillor Backer, wish to speak to it. For the seconder. Councillor Root, wish to speak to it. Any further debate? Vote conclude the debate. All those in favour? Against? State it again. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Council member reports and briefings. Are there any? No. In any case, we'll move on to petitions. There are nil, and deputations. We have 2. Mr. Shane Hoppy is here to talk about the tree removal at Broadview Oval, Yanta Tukuyata. Now, we don't have a seat, convenient seat for that. It's a very inconvenient seat over the side there.
There's a gap here.
Yes, that might be good. Squeeze them in there next to Councillor Rick. Be good.
Yeah, bring them.
Just wheel a chair around there, thank you, Deputy Mayor. We did talk about making it a bit cosier so we can hear each other. So we can.
Yep.
Terrific. So just call forward Mr. Hodgkin to provide your deputation. You're very welcome. In terms of the minutes, if you could state your name and address, and then we'll give you your 5 minutes.
Shane Hodby, 8 2nd Avenue, Setland Park.
All right.
Thank you for listening to me tonight. Obviously here from the Broadview Football Club's behalf. A couple of things, as Mayor Lachlan sort of said, was obviously about the trees, but I just want to address one thing first with the oval maintenance. I just want to say the oval has come up a treat. Obviously we had a few issues sort of through that January-February period, but I'm pleased to say the oval is in good condition as it can be around this time of year coming into the winter area. There's obviously a fair bit more work to be done on it. So, but again, Stephen, thank you for your help with that. So that's coming along. Just obviously with Alan as well, thank you. What I would also like to say with the program that the council is working through with the provider, if the Broadview Football Club can be kept in the loop on that moving forward as well, just so we know the provider, the current provider, that he understands his obligations, because obviously that hadn't happened over the last period as well. So if we can just be kept informed of that, but that it's coming up beautifully. With the trees, we've got 2 trees, the eucalyptus tree. We have a bit of a health and safety that we believe with the ambulance. The ambulance can't get all the way back to the 2 change rooms. And they've spoken about a couple of times that they've been out to the Oval, and it's something that I've been wanting to raise for a year, but now being the President, it's something that's come to mind. I think we need to have a look at it. Unfortunately, there is a eucalyptus tree that's in that sort of way. And there's a few other sort of issues that we do have with that tree. Is obviously it's a beautiful native tree, but at the moment we've got bees everywhere. All right, so we've got our barbecue just situated pretty much right next to it, and the bees are just hovering around like nothing else. Obviously, you've got a lot of players, spectators, kids around eating their food. Bees, I'd hate to see one get in their mouth and sting the back of their mouth. So that's definitely an issue. With that, they've got nuts that fall on the ground. Again, we have a lot of kids from sort of the under sixes that run through that sort of area into the change rooms. It is a little bit of danger for them slipping on, especially when it gets wet. So again, we do sort of keep the area as clean as possible, with the bark and the nuts, but unfortunately they do fall every day. We've also got the issue of the uplifting of the pavers around it, the tree, so that's actually getting worse, moving in all directions, not just one direction. So that in itself, with again kids running through and spectators walking through to the entrance of the club as well, is creating an issue. And we've had to last year have the plumber out twice. It's the root system, all right, with the trees that are going into the pipe. So, and as they sort of obviously put their whirly thing through it, it's obviously coming out with a lot of tree roots through it as well. The casuarina tree, obviously it's got needles, it's got gutter guards up there, it's got the gutter box there. Again, they continuously get in there, and we've had to replace the gutter box in particular a few times because it does fill up with water, it rusts, the water goes back up into the eaves and then comes back down inside as well. So we do have an issue from the building point of view. Again, what it's doing is uplifting the pergola pavers, which Stephen's seen as well with them uplifting. When you have to uplift one paver, you've got to lift up most of it to get it back flat square. So, so the casuarina is creating an issue there as well. Obviously, we're sort of happy at looking at obviously planting other trees, but more away from the building. I believe that no trees realistically should be planted next to a dwelling as well. So with my last 50 seconds I've got, I'd also just quickly about the croquet club that's on the other information here that was given to the councillors, were that we would like to look at utilising the croquet club or the land there as well. So we're happy to put a proposal in, which we've got one ready to go. We utilise it for our A's and B's warm-up, but with the ground being utilised with 279 kids last year, that's not including A's, B's and C's and under 18s, we're wanting to move our under 7s and under 8s into that area so we can take the wear and tear of the area. We do have someone that can do the upkeep on that, so we are happy to maintain that at our expense from the fertilisation and the cutting of it. Obviously, we'd need to look at the lighting and the watering aspect to see if that's up to scratch as well. So.
Thank you. Stay there. We may have some questions from elected members. So are there any questions? Councillor Rick.
Have you, or part, sorry, yeah. So first question I've got is, have you read the full report the council staff have put in, particularly on the trees that we've got to debate later coming in? So I'll ask that first. If you
Yes,
read it.
have it, yes.
Yeah. What was your thoughts, obviously, with that report?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's something that trees are an important part of it. So, look, again, if we could keep them there, we'd love to, but I think they need to be moved.
Just got the chair has asked if we are able to snare some money from the federal campaign to build a new building. Are the trees still a concern to you at all?
No, they wouldn't be, because they'd be away from the dwelling. But
Well, by dwelling you mean club rooms.
club rooms, so yeah, the club rooms are closed.
So
So,
you sleep in the new building.
so if they were to be, well, again, it depends on what's going to be happening. Yeah, obviously over the next period. Now that could be 2 years, could be 5 years, could be 10 years. All right, of the new club rooms. Yeah, obviously we're trying to put as much pressure, like yourself, great article in the paper. I am having a meeting with Steve Georganis. All right, again, trying to really push that at a meeting with Sean. So again, unfortunately, crystal ball stuff. If we knew that 2 years' time, we could probably try and work with it, but I still believe it's a massive health and safety from an ambulance. and the safety of our players and our kids as well.
Any further questions? Deputy Mayor.
Just a question regarding the tree at the front of the club grounds. I note that the council staff have recommended pruning. I take it that won't solve the problem with ambulance access because it's more about width as opposed to height.
That's correct. Yeah, because it's right in the middle. You can't sort of get to either side of it, left or right of it. Pruning is one thing, but again, it's the nature of the nuts falling on the ground. And again, I think you need to probably be there to have a look at when kids are running in, you can tell them to slow down as much as possible, and it does get wet. They have slipped over. It's not massive. I'm not going to stand here and say that, but it is a concern when kids are falling over, something that we can prevent. And the other part is, obviously we get into the winter months, the bees won't be of this issue as much, but at the moment with the weather we've had, and we've started training in sort of March, it does create a fair concern, especially barbecue now up and running as well. Thanks.
Any further questions? There being none, thank you very much, Mr. Hobbie, for your invitation.
Yeah.
To present your seat, Gary. Thank you. Now call upon the second deputy for tonight, Mr. Mark Standen, and knows the drill very well, but just to make sure that I stated as clearly as the last speaker, if you could state your name and address for the records.
Yes, Mark Standen, 7 Mawson Street, Nailsworth. Thank you to the CEO, the Mayor and elected members for having me along tonight and getting me here. This is the first time I've spoken here at 31. The last time I fronted the council was at 126. I've never spoken at 66, 181 or 51. And if those numbers don't mean anything to you, there's no reason they should, because those numbers do nothing to describe the locations. 31, of course, is this location here, Nailsworth Community Hall. 66, 181 and 51 are locations of Walkerville, Unley and Copper Coast Council. These numbers give you a clue as to where something is, but they don't tell you what something is. They're pretty bad at that. And that's why I want to talk about the council recommendation to name 128 Prospect Road 128. See, it's already falling apart. Let's start again. I would like to talk briefly about the council recommendation to name the new Prospect Library and Community Centre 128. In another life, I spent 25 years working in advertising, marketing, communications, so I've got a little bit of form in this area. Naming is hard. It causes division, exposes egos, and most times it's better to go with the most obvious option, which is usually a basic descriptor. And let me tell you, 128 is not a descriptor. It's a where, but it's not a what. And it's a name that needs to be a what. It needs to describe. As I said, we're not sitting in 31, we're sitting in Nailsworth Community Hall. I don't know about you, but I didn't know the street number before today because I didn't need to. I knew what the place was called. 128 is a poor option for other reasons. It has no unique identity. The place next door could equally be could name themselves 132 and probably will. There are literally millions of 128s throughout the world. Curiously, Fitzroy Library in Victoria is located at 128 Moore Street. I actually found multiple libraries around the world located at 128 from Sweden to India. And it's not just the libraries. Can anyone guess the street number for the Adelaide Town Hall? It's 128. Which brings up an interesting point. The name isn't even entirely accurate. The full location is 126 to 128 Prospect Road. It used to be 126 to 134. And then we sold off the 130 to 34 bed, and the town hall is still 126. So does that mean the town hall now becomes 128, or does it remain 126? So where did this name come from? From memory, it was a suggestion by the architectural firm. It was then embraced by the staff. So it was never really led by the community. It was instigated by the hired help and guided through the consultation process by the staff. The community didn't come up with it. They were simply presented as an option. And a lot of assumptions have been made. I read the report today and it reads, whilst not all councillors were present at this discussion, there was a sufficient level of confidence that council would be in a position to make a decision on facility naming at the scheduled April meeting. Hardly overwhelming consensus. The community currently call the building the new library. It's simple. No one, and I mean no one, will call it and does call it 128. And it will be a hard push to get people to call it that. Trust me, I've read the report and no one will be saying meet me at 128. I told my wife this little piece of marketing proposal today, and I said, see me at 1:28. And she goes, why then? Why not 1:30 or 2 o'clock? She said it's a time, not a place. From a practical point of view, there's also quite a few issues. As a Google search term, it's not particularly descriptive. Try putting 128 into a GPS. You need to search for something that is an actual name. And here's the thing, even if you call it 128, you're still going to have to give it a secondary description just to do Google searching. Because you'll go, hey Google, where is 128? And it'll go, what? Where is the Prospect Library and Community Centre? You're going to have to default to something else because it's not a descriptor. In closing, you're probably glad I'm closing, I urge you to strongly reject the recommendation before you and reject the notion there's any urgency to this process. There's not. It's a name. You can kind of put this off right up to the end bit. Someone's going to make some signs. Probably a little bit of stationery as well. But there's more than the options that you were given in the report, and they haven't, I don't think, been presented throughout the whole process. Remember, an effective name needs to be a what, not just a where. And that's why it's a name, not a number. This is the Nailsworth Community Hall. It's not 31. No one will ever call it that. Also, this new building this facility is not just about Prospect Road, which this name suggests. It is owned and will be used by the entire city of Prospect. 128 confines it to Prospect Road, and it's not about Prospect Road. I urge you to follow your hearts, your common sense, and send this recommendation back to the staff for further review. Questions?
Maybe just in case there are questions from the members, are there any questions?
Yes, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, Councillor.
It just again raises more questions that we've had in discussing this. So I guess it's easy to come here and say not 128, but did you have any other suggestions yourself?
My major suggestion is keep it simple, stupid. Yes.
Oh,
I
yes.
don't know how it's going to fit on a sign, but work through it.
Take that as an expression, not an accusation.
Look, my option would be Prospect Library and Community Centre, or Prospect Library and Civic Centre. It is the descriptor. It tells us what it is. You don't need any marketing. I noticed in the report that there's going to time be spent on the marketing for meters at 128. If you need to market the name, it's the wrong name. The name should just work. You shouldn't need to go out and market it. I do like the Aboriginal one. I have no problem with that. What was that? I like it. But once again, there's an old thing in the car, if you're a car enthusiast, that if you have to explain what you drive, you're driving the wrong car. And then you spend your whole life explaining it. I think you can spend your whole life explaining what 120 is when you could just have a simple descriptor. To answer your question, Councillor Barnett, Prospect Library and Community Centre, or Prospect Library and Civic Centre. Something as simple as that would be my suggestion.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Rick.
Yeah, if you can, I know you did send an email at some point, but in terms of the name Prospect 128 itself, what were your thoughts with that?
Once again, I think if you said that, and I've spoken to many people on the street, if you say Prospect 128, they have no clue what that is. And certainly people across our side of the road, I don't know, what is it? Is that a new coffee place that we're going to? It would take so much time just explaining what it is when you could just do the explaining with a descriptive name. I know it's not as interesting. I know it's not as funky. I know it doesn't have the same cachet, and we all want the new building as much as that. We all want it to be updated, funky, but just take a step back and also make it work.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor back.
Just trying to think of a question so I can
That'd be good.
compliment. Look, I'd really like to know, again, I think I liked your comment about it being for the whole area, not just for Prospect Road. Does the Prospect Library and Community Centre, would that be something that would be acknowledged across the whole area, do you think, as opposed to just defining it by a number of...
Yeah, I think that would work better. For a start, it actually says Prospect, so people feel a part of the community. My wife said that the 128 has no sense of community about it. It has no sense of ownership. It's almost corporate and cold. It really has nothing inviting about it. It's one of those things. It needs to be something that people know what is. And I think if you call it that, they're already calling it that. You might as well just go along with there's two ways. If you have a wave coming towards you in the ocean, you can stand there and hold it back and it'll wash over you, or you can jump on a surfboard and surf. And I think the name is already what it is. You need to just surf with it.
Further questions? That being the case, thank you very much for standing for your deputation.
Thank you very much.
Gallery. It's customary to draw forward items of interest to deputies, elected members. The first item you have coming up in the business items is regarding Broadview Oval. So I'm happy to leave that one where it is. But the facility naming is at item 13.8. So just seek leave of the meeting to fill item 13.8 to immediately on item 13.1. All those in favour of that change? Against? Carried. So we'll do that. Thank you. Just keep moving. Motion to notice nil. Staff are very good. Questions with notice nil. Questions without notice, are there any?
Thinking of motions. I just got two, and both involve letters. One, I was asking you as the mayor, have we, or should we, write a letter to Kate thanking her for the years that she's looked after us, because she's not in an election, so it's not taking sides of this winner, this loser, that sort of thing, but she's actually retiring, so I think she's done quite a vast bit for the city of Prospect. And have we sent a letter to her? If not, I'd like to suggest we do.
Yeah, I've certainly done personally, but I'm happy to take it on board.
Right, and the other one is, the other week when we got the motion through about condemning the situation that happened in New Zealand, is it possible we can, as councillors, get a copy of the letter or letters that were sent to the local churches or the local people we sent letters to? Because I have had people ask me, so.
CEO, you know where that's at?
Ask the director to, because it's actually sitting in community services, and so we can't get drafted.
Yeah, through the chair, that's exactly right. There's letters that were drafted that I saw on my email today that have gone to all combined officers to do a check.
I'm just digging up all the addresses of all the churches to send them to.
So we can get a copy when that's done. Thank you.
I'll write a copy. Any further questions without notice? No, being none, we'll move on then to minutes of committees and regional subsidiaries and other bodies, of which there are nil. So reports for discussion. The first is item 13.8, Woodview Oval, Yada to the Yada maintenance. Recommendations on page 3. And 4.
With an addition, to make an additional item.
Well, customary for me to ask if someone's had an emergency inform that it's been advertised in the public notice, so I'll do that. Happy to take an amendment, or actually 2 amendments if we need to after that. Somebody wish to move it in its current form, get it on the table. Councillor Barnett.
I'll move for the sake of discussion.
That's your speech. Thank you. And I'm a seconder. Getting there. Wish to speak to it.
If somebody doesn't want to make a amendment.
And I don't know, I do, and I don't know whether this changes the nature of the recommendations, but I would like to draw the elected members' attention to page 6, the first paragraph, response 1.1 maintenance program. I believe that paragraph is pretty much incorrect. The turf conditions on the oval weren't as a result of hot weather, which could not have been predicted. They were a result of negligence by the contractor, and also a degree of negligence by our own staff for not monitoring the situation. Was specifically related to the fact that the sprinkler system wasn't working effectively and was watering 2 square feet of lawn around each sprinkler head. So I don't, whilst I agree with the rest of the report that the first paragraph there is incorrect. I don't know whether that needs to be changed or not, but I just wanted to bring it to people's attention that that's not true.
Do you want to ask a question about that, councillor, or just, did you hear, just make that statement? Up to you.
Oh, yeah, okay. So my question might be,
Why isn't it true?
why isn't it true?
As a narrow, simple question with a pretty broad reading. CEO, who do we direct that question to?
Oh, is it? Sorry.
I've got a fairly bold statement made, and it's directed.
Through the chair, thank you for your statements. And look, I will just follow on to say in the next paragraph, it does indicate that council did engage with the turf maintenance contractor. Look, it could have been a combination of two things, but ultimately the extreme heat conditions is what pretty much caused the damage to the turf. And although the contractor was monitoring, the appropriate action wasn't taken. So your comment is reasonably fair, but I won't necessarily say that the weather didn't have any impact on it.
Thank you, Acting Director. Did you mean anything further?
Okay, so that brings me to a good question now. Can you confirm that we were actively monitoring the condition of the turf over that period of time proactively? So council staff members were monitoring the turf as they monitor at all other major facilities and did recognise there was an issue and proactively acted upon that and brought it to the attention of the contractor.
Through the chair, again, picking up on that first part of the report, the maintenance program, it does say that the watering regimes were increased. So was it a proactive response? Reactive / proactive. Ultimately, I guess the contractor and administration attended to it as soon as it was humanly possible, so to speak, acknowledging that there was an error with the watering and immediately leapt in to rectify, and I guess the images below are evidence of how quickly the turf did recover once the watering was increased.
So that was
responsibility accepted by both.
So therefore, would it be fair to say that it wasn't actually due to the extreme weather conditions, it was due to a malfunction of the watering system before the ground centre?
It was a combination of factors.
Thank you, Acting Director. Thank you. So the motion's on the floor. Do I have any further speakers to it? The background.
Is it possible to take this in parts, move this in parts?
Yes.
Just following up from Deputy Mayor Larwood's, comments, it doesn't seem to be an accepting of our role in managing the contractors, and I don't see that in the report. And I don't think we can alter a report. So would it be fair that we could maybe vote down part one and vote another part? Is that possible as part of the...
And parts, councillor, that is your choice, and you can speak to, obviously, not telling that it's against, but you can speak to that option if you wish, but all I do as a chair is taking in parts.
Yeah, because basically, so I suppose just my commentary would be similar. It's the fact that it had to come to a council meeting addressed by two councillors going out there. To me, this is business as usual, and it should just happen. And so I think that the report doesn't reflect that oversight of the contractors is maybe not picking up on the sentiment of why this came to council in the first place. So I would be not supporting noting the report because I don't agree that it's correct, and so I'd be voting against.
Any further? Councillor Richard.
Yeah, well, look, I have to agree with both speakers. I mean, yes, we had quite hot weather, but my opinion is that the bulk of the issues were caused because we weren't managing the contractor, in my opinion, we weren't managing the contractor appropriately, and it was let to get into a situation where it shouldn't have been. Yes, you can add extreme weather to that, and yes, that could have played a factor, but I think the overall part here, and I do agree with Councillor Larwood and Councillor De Backer that the extreme weather parts were not the key component. It was our manager of the contractor, but again, that's my opinion. I would also add to these two recommendations, having, I guess, and also I'd like to acknowledge both Councillor Harris and Deputy Mayor Larwood for their involvement, and Deputy Mayor Larwood and I met with Shane on site to look at some of these issues in further detail. Councillor Harris was an apology to that meeting, but I am aware he has followed up as well. With the two trees, and my opinion on the two trees is that they're both problematic, but my opinion is that the first tree is actually in front of the clubhouse is even more problematic because of the access for people. Having, I guess, watched players and officials exiting the venue, having watched football there, I see that, I guess, with the uplifting of the pavers and the nuts dropping, I see that as a real OH&S issue. I wasn't actually aware that the ambulance, until the president of the club mentioned that to me, I wasn't aware that the ambulance were having issues, but then having gone on site and looked, you physically see that there's no way the ambulance could safely get around and work in a safe environment around that. So that was something that I took away from that meeting. And I would like to start, and I'll test it, but I would like to start to add a third recommendation. I would like that first tree in front of the clubhouse to be removed, or consideration from council to obviously remove that tree. And I'll leave the second one that's over to the side of the club. If someone else wants to add that, they can. I understand it's been taken in part, so that will be form part of it. But if I can just get the name of that, sorry, my iPad just... Sorry, the gum tree, yeah, sorry. I just want to make sure I got the technical... Yeah, the gum tree in front, located in front of the clubhouse, spectator area, if you want to call it that.
Councillor, you're moving an amendment. Go check with the
Yes, I'm just obviously waiting to see.
You just check those words, please.
So gum tree located in front of the club room, spectator area. Yes, I'll leave the other tree out, that's fine. Yep.
It actually was the council.
I'm sorry, councillor, just checking that the motion does what you want to do.
Yeah, correct. Yeah,
Because it is contrary to the advice from the Ombudsman in the report.
certainly. Yeah.
Let's clear it up.
I just have a query on that, if I'm not...
Sorry, you're just speaking further to your amendment, I'll see whether the...
I can talk further to the... no, that's fine. Yeah.
Take a brief question, then I will ask move second that have been incorporated, which includes you, Councillor Barnett. So you have a question?
Yes, my question is on part 3. This is not a decision of council, is it? Or does it go to council's community assessment panel?
Due to the size of the tree.
No,
Good question.
good question. Yeah.
Thank you very much. It is a good question. We would have to check as to whether it has been designated a regulated tree, but my director is indicating that he doesn't consider it has been listed in the development plan as a regulated tree.
Sunny.
We own the site as well, so we would follow through in our own processes about the removal.
So my follow-up question is, so who are requesting? Where council requests, but who or to who?
You're quite right. The mover of the amendment would be happy to add in a couple of words to clarify that. Council requests staff remove the gum tree located.
Or to
Request staff organise the removal of.
Yes.
So that's clarified the intent of the amendment. I'll now see whether the mover and second are interested in incorporating. Don't have to. Be in the mover.
yes.
Deputy Mayor Larwood.
Do we have a chance to speak to it or no?
Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes, I see leaving the meeting to incorporate. All those in favour of incorporating that change? All those against? It's thus incorporated and now becomes part of the motion. Councillor Rick, you probably have another minute and a half left to speak if you need.
Yeah, thank you. So to the rest of the recommendations, I would like to thank the staff for the follow-up with the club and the contractor since the issues were raised, and I do note that the staff and the administration have been active in seeking resolutions to the issues. And I do note that the report is extensive, and it talks about the trees out the front, it talks about the lawn there, also the lawn that the volunteer was watering. I can see that's up to speed, as well as the watering of the trees out the front. I can further see that the council staff have considered the safety issues with the nets behind the goals, and I think that will be something to monitor, because as people do use the fitness equipment, particularly if games are on and training lights, if people have been obstructed by flying footballs, particularly when you go to AFL games, they're always told be careful of flying footballs behind the goals. I do think that could be a safety concern that we do need to monitor in future. So I do put on the record my thanks to the administration for the follow-up since all the issues we've raised. I also thank the Broadview Football Club for coming to the council and raising all the issues and for their involvement in the process as well.
Thank you. Any further speakers to the motion? Councillor Harris.
Yes, couple of things. First of all, the point one with the maintenance, I accept that. I do have a disagreement, but it has been pointed out, and I think my voice was a bit loud, so other people most probably heard I disagreed with it, that we should have been following it up, and I'm confident we are now. The process that's happening, that will sort of happen, and it often goes back to what I say, particularly looking after our own property. I'm always hesitant about subcontractors doing it as opposed to our own people. So the point one goes through, and I follow up those, particularly with the nets and the various things that are happening. It's good when there's a game on, and I assume this would be the idea if there were nets as for the game, as opposed to maybe practice, and practice night time could be a bit more tricky with our walking come running track around it. So hopefully we can look at that. The additional irrigation, number two, I go along with that, as we already see that it's improvement. But I do have two things I'd like to point out that I sort of disagree with on even halfway through. Can I ask a question, Dave? Mayor? If we go over to page 7 and down the bottom, response to 1-2 unused croquet land, we're talking about that. In January 2000, so it's the second paragraph, January 2017, there was some interest, quotes, obtained, etc. To me, that reads that that's the end. There was interest, and now the interest is gone, as opposed to, I believe it's part of the master plan. So I'm not going to hold up the world for it, but that sort of reads to me that it's no longer an interest, but particularly because the football club want to look at it. In the page before, page 6, second paragraph in the bottom, we actually talk about the master plan that for some reason we've never voted on, maybe just because we haven't got the money, but it's never got to a next stage. So I want people that are interested to take note that at the moment through the master plan it's in. But I'm just going to finish quickly with the trees. I hate knocking down any trees, particularly native ones, and so why did I vote for it? If our master plan, no, I'll say that back, when our master plan becomes a reality and it happens and it gets into the proper situation, we will build, we as everybody, will build new club rooms, what will be for the football, which will be over further in the current plans, over further, and neither of these trees will bother you. And that's why I definitely supported the people that raised it of not taking the shea oak out. The shea oak has a problem because it has the needles, and the needles go into the box gutters, and not so much on the building, that you can't stop that at the moment. But on the lean-to where you can sit in, that was built afterwards, and I have seen the needles, how bad they do get in, and the others. Now that becomes a maintenance, people doing work and those sort of things. Now I think we can put up with that until either we get the new place or it's not a reality, then I might change my mind. But for now, that's it. The other one, to me, then becomes solely a safety issue. To me, the tree is terrific, healthy, and I think it's fantastic. There's no question. I wish I had it in my backyard. But we got tin lids running around there. We got amber. So in this circumstances, that's why I particularly supported this one. And it comes out the way. It's the kids that run to and from, the rain, the water, the slipping, the getting up, the bees, they're gone. But for little kids, that's not the case. So I'm supporting that against my normal wishes of knocking out a tree. So I urge people to accept the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Green.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'd start by saying I'm always really impressed with the work that happens at Broadview Oval, which is not 13 Maiponga or 13 Maiponga Terrace. It's actually Broadview Oval. It has a name, just to reinforce the point of a previous deputy. But I think the work that happens at Broadview Oval is quite spectacular. So I just want to preface what I'm about to say with that. I'm concerned about new recommendation 3. I won't speak about the other 2 because I think everything's been said on those. As I look at this one on page 8, and there's a question on this to the appropriate director. I'm presuming that the ambulance can have access up to the point of the tree, but then there is pedestrian and gurney access beyond the point of the tree to the change room. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that's my understanding, but I also understand that I believe the club are wanting an ambulance vehicle to come even closer, and that's why the tree is obstructing access.
So what I don't see in this report, and I know it probably wasn't necessarily on the minds of the author of the report, given Councillor Ripp's amendment, but I'd be really interested from the SA Ambulance Service point of view as to whether the ambulance actually needs access directly to the club rooms. Having worked in emergency services for a very short part of my career, I've seen certainly the ability to get a gurney pretty much anywhere. Ambulances don't always go to the point of an injury or of an incident. And given that, I would think it's probably less than 50 metres, probably a lot less than 50 metres from that point of the tree to the club room, whether that is actually indeed necessary. So that's just a question I've got. I'm of the view that we should never remove trees unless we absolutely have to within City Prospect. We don't have a lot of green space, so every bit of green and brown that we have in a tree is something that we should preserve and keep as long as we possibly can. I would support this if we didn't have a master plan on the table. So we have a master plan on the table. We've had some media in the last 2 or 3 weeks about money coming through. When mentioned the federal election, we've got some money earmarked in the long-term financial plan. I just think we can remove this tree and within a couple of years potentially building a new facility somewhere else and we're down a tree. I'd much prefer to see ways to mitigate the risk around ambulance access by talking to SA Ambulance, understand what their thoughts on this particular issue is, keep the tree, and if we find there is absolutely no other option, come back to Chamber and ask for it to be removed. I won't be supporting that part of the motion, no disrespect to the football club or to Councillor Ripp's amendment, but I think I'm of the view that we shouldn't be removing trees, and I don't think it's absolutely necessary, and I don't think we've done all due diligence to come to that decision as yet. The Arborist report says it's a healthy tree. There's some pruning, some maintenance issues that we can deal with to manage the tree's location. We're not going to move the trunk, of course, but I think access is possible, albeit not for a vehicle, but certainly for a gurney, which is probably the more important thing for the change room. You can't get an ambulance in the change room. So I won't be supporting that. I will be supporting recommendation 1 and 2.
Thank you, Councillor Crew. Any further speakers to this item? There being none, back to you, Councillor Barnett, you see the need to sum up.
Yes, and reminder, so we are having them as 3 separate votes, voting, my understanding. I understand that some people with part 1, but it's if you look at the balance of the report, except just for it's really a few minor things that some people aren't comfortable with. So I don't think there should really be a problem with that. You're receiving a note in the report, and I think it's on public record now with the recording of the meeting, so people can note what some of the dissent was from some of the councillors. With part 2, I think that seems reasonable. Again, we seem to have struggled over the years. Hopefully this will be the last year that we struggle with things to do with irrigation, not just in this place, but other places. It's, I guess if it happened in winter, we'd be blame winter rather than summer, to some of those that dissented again. With part 3, again, always a very vexed question. I do wonder whether there has been, we haven't heard, and perhaps it's remiss not to have asked the deputation, but has there been other ways and means to perhaps avoid some of the things? I mean, as far as working around the fact that you've got this Gumtree and it does, to all intents and purposes, be causing some issues. But I think perhaps if we just hold, my personal opinion would be just to hold off on that part 3 until we have a few more good hard look at it. Again, it's the same issue of that we face all around the city and metropolitan area, and that's probably other parts of the country as well. That we get civilisation, we have buildings, we plant trees and wood faith, and then who wins? Usually the buildings and the human activities win, and the gum trees lose out. And mind you, we've had other passionate debates about this and how much it actually costs. This gum tree most probably, if we wanted to replace it elsewhere, it'd be a few $1,000s, and all the other things. But at any rate, I think would be my indication from myself. I'm voting that I would not vote for that at the moment until we have a little bit harder look at it.
Thank you. That concludes the debate. So I'll take Bernard's taken parts of the consent by will. So all those in favour of part 1? Against? This is carried. All those in favour of part 2? It's carried. Against? It's carried unanimously. Yes. And all those in favour of part 3? All those against? That is lost. Okay, thank you.
Isn't that what we call it?
So, Mr. Hodby, that concludes the discussion going forward over tonight. You're more than welcome to stay for the balance of the meeting if you wish. I understand that you had other things to do that you were pretty through life and do those. So, but thank you for your interest and staff will get in touch, obviously, about the outcome of tonight's meeting. Move on now to item 30.8, which is the sorry, we've lost the screen behind. You'll have to, you've got a nice pretty blue. We'll move on to item 30.8, it's in your papers. The matter that you agreed to pull forward, the Community Innovation Centre facility naming, recommendations on page 95. There's a lot of discussion around this. We encourage staff to bring it to us to crystallise a decision. See how we go. Does anybody wish to move it in its current form?
Is it 95, wasn't it? Page 95. I think mine just froze. That's right, got it.
Is that not right? 95?
Yeah, no, got it, yeah. It's 99 of the actual papers, yeah.
Somebody happy to move it in its current form? Deputy Mayor is doing so. Do you wish to speak to it?
I'd love to speak to it. Get it on the floor. Okay, so I'm scratching my head a fair bit here as to how we've ended up in this situation. I'll draw everyone's attention to page 96, community involvement, part 5. So just a bit of a pot of history about this. So when we first ventured down this path, we had a name which was Library Plus because we wanted to acknowledge it was a library, but also that we were building more into it than just a library. Then we moved to a working title which was Click, which is including Library Innovation Centre Community Hub. Again, we've extrapolated on the term library because we wanted to make something more Sorry, technicality, carry on. Couldn't concentrate on saying in my head. Do you want to go back or? No, so one thing we love to do in local government is consult, and we've consulted, I think, about as much as we could have possibly consulted. So if we have a look at what we've done, kicked off the process and we had consulting opportunities at the Spring Fair, which were quite robust and gave us a fair bit of input, both in favour and against a whole variety of options, and some of the popular names started to bubble to the surface. We established, or we threw it to the community reference group. It's also been discussed at PEG meetings, various workshops, internal staff and project teams. So I think we've done about as much as we possibly can to get to this point. I'd say in particular, I feel like my role as an elected member is to express the wishes of our residents, and the distillation of all the input is what we've got here to talk about tonight, in particular the community reference group. The community reference group has been tasked with having a good hard look at this, and we put our trust and faith and confidence in that group of people. And they've guided us along the way, and that's one of the reasons I've got a community reference group, is because we want their feedback and want their input and be guided by a lot of smart people thinking about the decisions that we need to make here. So we got to the point in March where we went through all that process, and we came up with something which, through all the consultation and workshops and discussion and thinking about this, we thought represented what we wanted to do, and it gave us the opportunity, that was Prospect 128, gave us the opportunity to start building a brand. I think that sometimes you can, a brand evolves itself and doesn't need any explanation, but I think at other times there's been many, many examples of where a brand has been built and developed. Lot 14 is the most appropriate one that comes to mind, and lo and behold, there's a number in that name there. I think it's really sold what Lot 14 is about. Everyone knows what Lot 14 is. Everyone knows where Lot 14 is quite clearly. So I think if we manage the brand development from here on, then I think we can achieve something similar. So for me, if we want to disregard everything that we've been through and all the time that we've spent and all the time that our community reference group has spent and all the time that the staff have spent taking on feedback, discussing ideas and so on and so forth, and getting to this point, it'd be a really disappointing outcome for me. I think also to point out that out of the community reference group and the involvement of the Gun language experts, there was a whole bunch of really interesting and great ideas put forward to reference particular parts of the building, which we've done, we've acknowledged their sentiments and also taken on board those suggestions as really good ideas. So for me, we've looked at this from every single angle possible. We've been through a consultation process, which, we don't always get it right, but I think we've got it pretty right at this point in time. So therefore, I think that whilst not everyone will agree, I think what we need to do is make a decision and call the building 128, and then we need to all work on getting on board with that and building a brand around that and leveraging it as much as possible. So I'm interested to see what everyone around the table's got to say, and should the motion be carried, I'm really interested to see what the staff will help us unpick and unpack with regards to how we leverage the brand of 128 and turn it into something just iconic and it's memorable, compelling and relevant to what we're trying to do here.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Pitch, would you speak to it?
Just quickly, I just endorse what Matthew said, and I take on board Mark's comments. It's got the impression that it's quite evident that I don't think any name will receive 100% approval. And so what the two groups have come up with is not really a name going against what Mark said, but an identifier. And I think it's simple, and people will grasp it fairly quickly. I mean, you look at the lot that Matthew was talking about. There's also a 2KW. I mean, who came up with that name? People might say, what does that mean? But probably 98% of people in Adelaide know exactly what 2KW is and where it is. So I just think 128's simple, and we've had a lot of consultation over it, and I endorse the name or identifier.
Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor Backer, then Councillor Green.
Look, I'm sort of a bit torn on this one. So there were very good comments made by Deputy Linda Flowers, and I agree with Robin Pearson, 2KW, so Friday night. In regards to the name versus the signage, I think we have to actually pull apart those two things. So, I mean, I don't really think the signage is that original. It just looks like the zoo signage. Is it custom? The numbers or the...
Good question. So, CEO Director, what's the proposal for the composition of the sign, whatever it is? It was steel from memory.
Through the chair, I remember a metal product of sorts, but I can't be 100% sure.
Yeah. Okay.
To go up to 10 degrees.
So, and I would heed our deputy's words in that we feel we're under pressure to make this decision. Ultimately, we're looking at signage as an identifier that is also branding. So we were reminded by Deputy Mayor Larwood that obviously lots of the teams have been very successful, but they've also had a huge state budget to deal with. We are a smaller local council and we're creating a community facility, and the community is not in any of the naming category. So I'm saying, is this a facility for me? I don't feel it is. I think that some of the, so I'll put the signage to one side. I don't have a problem with 128, Prospect 128 as signage going down the street. I actually prefer more signage. I prefer Walkervilles, even though it's quite corporate. For someone who's new to the area, it's not obtuse. And I will go with it. If after 2 months of operation, you have an entry here sign tapped to the door and a call flute saying entry this way. And that would be a sign of failure. If we have 128 with no demarcation that it's a library or a community centre. We are a large community, and that's in our diversity as well. Not everyone speaks English as a first language, so some people are vision impaired. I think it's actually quite, in the community space, it's quite negligent to not be very clear about our communication of what this facility is for our community. So pulling it apart, I'm not sure which way I'm going to vote. I'm going to hear the rest of the discussions. But certainly if we look at signage, and I know that's been delegated to the CEO, I don't think there's adequate signage that says what the facility is, how to get into it, especially going down Prospect Road. We were all enthralled with the Adelaide City Library, which had a playful cloud that just says City Library this way. And it just, speaks volumes. Even though they've got a 3D printing lab and books and events and all that kind of thing, it says City Library. I haven't seen anything yet in the signage when you're actually looking down Prospect Road as a pedestrian that indicates go this way. No fins, no bollards, no nothing. So I'm really concerned, and while I'm at it, we're talking about signage or whatever, there still is no tree in front of the library. Initially we had landscaping plans with the jacaranda. I'm still yet to see it. I don't know if it's included. I don't know where that discussion is going to happen, but I'm actually more concerned about that at this point in time. So I'll hear the conversations around the floor, but if we pull apart the signage, having a 128, fine, but it still has to be very clear where the entry is, that it's a library and community centre. As far as the Payensi name, again, I don't think there's any urgency in that as long as we're consulting adequately. Often buildings will have a signage board inside with this was opened by, that could be a column inside that has the levels or whatever, the Payensi Community Library and Art Centre or whatever it is with the levels. But as far as an identifier on the outside, happy with the 128 or Prospect 128. As long as it's adequate signage. Regarding the marketing, it's a library and community centre as far as I'm concerned. That's how I'll refer to it. Make it easy for people, follow the way, ride the road. That's what I would say.
Thank you, Mayor. So thank you for the previous speakers and their comments. And one of the things that Deputy Mayor Larwood commented on was that we've been talking about this for some time and been going back and forth, and I think that's probably a symptom that we haven't got it right yet, rather than we do have it right. If we had it right, we'd be sitting here today high-fiving, we would be in debate, and we would agree on a name, and we're just not at that point. I wouldn't have been disappointed if this had laid on the table. It hasn't, so we're going to have to vote on it. So I will foreshadow an amendment to recommendation 2 shortly. I think we heard from the Deputy tonight, and some may have also got emails over the last couple of weeks from different people making some commentary about the names. I don't think it's the biggest issue on the agenda in Prospect, but I think it is something that we are going to have to live with for a fairly long period of time. I'm not convinced with number 128 as the brand for the building. I haven't been for some time, and I think if people can recall the last meeting we had, where I talked about us being a bit braver and looking at how we can use Indigenous names to build our of that view. The report, at the last council meeting, we talked about going back to have a conversation about the naming, and we did that last week where 3 councillors weren't here, and it started about 9 o'clock, my recollection was correct. So it was a fairly brief conversation when almost half of our councillors weren't here, and I don't think that is a robust conversation to go back and actually talk about what the name looks like. So I think there are some people clearly in favour of 128, and the democratic process will demonstrate whether that's the name or not shortly. But I think we haven't quite got it right. In fact, we keep coming back to debate, and there isn't consistency around the room about what we want to call it. It says we don't have it right yet. I agree that 128 is a time or it's a street number. It's not a location. It's not a destination. I think the Deputy said something along the lines of it's a where, not a what. And I think that's actually very true. In terms of a comment I just want to make about in the council report, it talks about signage and about how 128 fits much better on the landscaping model than anything else of a longer name, such as painting. And I just was thinking about that. I went back to last meeting's agenda where we had Prospect 128, which seemed to fit really well on the landscaping diagram. And so I'll just point out, I don't think that should be a consideration in any of our debate about the length of the word, because it fitted well when it was recommended as Prospect 128. Now there was a secondary recommendation around painting, and that doesn't seem to fit. So I would just ask elected members to consider that when they vote, because I don't think that's a consideration. I would like to make an amendment, and that amendment is basically recommendation 2 as it stands, but removing 128 and adding in painting. And I think for me this does a number of things. It shows that we are leaders in reconciliation within the City of Prospect, and I think that is really important. In fact, as I look back to our recently released, or yet to be released, I'm not sure which, Reconciliation Action Plan under 2.4, it talks about showing recognition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander connections to the local area. And the deliverable is to provide significant references to the local Kaurna peoples, the traditional owners of the Adelaide Plains, Prospect Council area in brackets, in public art and design elements as part of the architecture and fit-out design and development of the new Community Library and Innovation Centre Civic Centre building, including temporary signs to provide local recognition and respect. But it does recognise how we, as part of our Reconciliation Action Plan, should be identifying and actually putting our money where our mouth is in terms of acknowledging the Indigenous owners of the land in which we are meeting now and in which our building is going to be set upon. So I'd like to move that as an amendment and force that process.
Thank you. As is customary, I'll ask the mover and seconder if they're happy to incorporate and take a vote if they are. If not, simply becomes an amendment to carry on with the debate as an amendment, and I'll therefore be seconded. So firstly, Deputy Mayor, are you happy to incorporate that change?
Can you just explain that process again?
Sorry. What I do with the proposed amendment here is seek consensus around whether we'll adopt that without having full debate on the amendment. So just do it normally to ask the mover, they're happy to incorporate, yes or no. Ask the seconder, are they happy to incorporate, yes or no. If they both are, then I'll seek leave in the meeting to incorporate. If that's a majority,
and if the mover or seconder aren't happy to...
No, just that process stops. You just go back and ask for a second of the amendment and we debate it as an amendment.
Yeah.
So you're on the process?
I think so.
Okay. So are you happy to incorporate the change?
No.
Okay. So we go back into the amendment. So now seek a seconder to the amendment. Councillor Harris, happy to second it?
Yes. Yes, I do, particularly because I forget who wasn't here, one's still not here, that I was fairly happy with 128 last week.
Actually,
Push that. And thanks to a fellow councillor that nudged my conscience of whether I was right or wrong. And I believe I was wrong. And I think taking away the various ovals and the various sports team, this building is most probably, as Prospect Council, our most significant thing in the city. So, you know, North Adelaide Football Club might be good if they're winning, Broadview might be good if they're winning. All these things are special to us, but the special heart of the city of Prospect is the whole council. I don't even know what to call it. The council chamber, come library, come gallery, come everything in that one box and dice. And to me then, what better respect can we show to the people who have walked through our city, lived and looked after it for us. For how many years I don't know, but definitely in that 40,000 year sort of mark. And it's not black history that they were on it's Prospect's history. There is no colour in it. It's the history of people that walked and looked after this land. And our most important building, I think, personally, by calling it Park Institute, I hope, by calling it this, we're showing that ultimate respect. Now, if I got to explain, and like behind me that just spoke earlier and that, and the other people that moved it in that 128, or various other names, 128 Prospect, or any of these other names, if I got to explain it to them, I could still do that. Yes, it's 128 because that's where it is on Prospect Road. It's 128 Prospect because, yes, it's the city of Prospect. But to be able to explain to anyone that asks you why we call it an Indigenous name, we talk about people on this land and Prospect. I'm not talking about the rest of Australia. I'm just talking about Prospect all the way through. And why there's only 2.8% of them still living in our community, goes up and down, but that's about what we have in our sort of area. It wasn't always like that, and maybe it won't always be like that. But to me, it would be the proudest way to say where we are, who we are, and who we respect. I'm pure white from Irish backgrounds. That's where my happiness comes from. I'm pure white, but we have Greeks and Italians and now Indians and all that. So we were immigrants on a black countryside. And now I don't see it as black countryside. I see it as Prospect, our city, and I believe that would be a proud name to stand up there and for me to explain it.
Thank you. Thank you. We now have an amendment on the floor. Let's move to seconded. Any further debate on the amendment? Councillor Back.
Thanks for allowing debate by not putting motion. I think that's really important. We should do it more often. Again, I'm just going to pull out two things here. One is the naming of the building, and the other one is to do with signage and marketing. So I think we've kind of felt shoehorned by the architects to fit our identity on a sign, and I think that's the wrong way to think about it. So thank you, Councillor Group, for your comments in regards to that. We can have an identifier that can be different from the naming of the building. And as far as marketing, I mean, the words I would use would be pay-in fee, Prospect Library and Civic Centre. That's the way I would be marketing it. Okay, so pay-in fee is the building, it's the Prospect Library and Civic Centre. End of. Or substitute community if you want to do community, makes sense, whatever. So I would welcome amendments because I really just don't want to be stuck with pay-in fee and nothing that says Prospect. So I think we need to be very clear with the staff what we're doing as signage and what we're doing as marketing. And I don't think this motion actually clearly defines it. I think it's trying to do both when they're actually two different things. Because Prospect 128 would be tidy. We could tie it all up. It could be a sign. It could be a brand, as long as we've got enough marketing money like the state government. And obviously for some people that ticks the box. You can tell, and I though we consult, we are consulting. So we are representative of our community. All the people we talk to, we were voted in by our community to have opinions such as this. And I just think that it needs to be easily reflective of the purpose of what it is. It's the Prospect Library and Civic Centre or Community Centre. Still going to have Town Hall written above the Town Hall. I saw that in the picture. Thank you very much. So there is a civic purpose to it. So, which is why I'm saying Paisley as the library and community centre, because I want the community to feel welcome. It's really for them. It's not, I mean, even though we have the staff at level 2 and 3 doing a great job, it's the ground floor and the reason we're marketing is to actually get the community to use it. So I would welcome an amendment from the floor, the Paisley Prospect Library and Community Centre as the way we actually market it. As far as what we have on the front of the building, directional signage, 128, whatever, I'm happy with whatever. But we need to refer to it as to a library and community centre.
Further speakers to the amendment. Councillor Rick.
Just a question first. With an amendment on the floor at the moment, am I actually able to move an additional amendment? Where that's sitting at the moment? Just a question, please.
Generally, I don't. So, because I think it's best to deal with one amendment at a time. If it's an amendment to this,
Yes.
then let this one run its course. If it gets up, then I'm happy to take an amendment because that then becomes the motion, but not until it's endorsed.
So my amendment was going to be on point 2, so it's better to wait.
May I foreshadow something, Councillor, but I won't take it as an amendment while we're in this debate.
Okay, I'd like to foreshadow an amendment that we call the building Paisley, and put a dash or however you want to do it, Paisley Prospect Library and Community Centre. I was tossing up between civic and community, but I'm happy with community hearing the previous speaker, so
Wish to speak to what you've got the chance, Councillor, under this amendment?
speak to the foreshadowing.
No, to this amendment?
I was sitting there as the speakers were speaking and raising various points, thinking how do we combine both of these, because yes, I love the name Paisley, and I believe if I'm correct it means good prospects, and I think that's awesome. Where prospect makes sense, I think great, I'm Paisley. I was really happy with that, and I was sitting there going, how do we link that though? So yes, and I'm happy to educate people too when they come up to me and say, what does Paisley mean? I'll say good prospects. So I think that's a great story to tell. But I also want the name to be something where someone randomly going down can see it, see both of the names and understand exactly what the building is. Because unfortunately not everyone's going to take the interest to look. I would if I saw a name I wasn't sure, I'd get on and Google it because I guess I'm a curious person. I like to find out. Not everyone will though. And we need the building to be easily identifiable so people know that's a library, that's a civic centre, that's a community centre. And if we do use the name Paisley, we can educate people and we can involve the history of Prospect with that. And I think with the meaning good prospects, I think that's fantastic. So I was looking at a way we can combine both. And initially I was thinking of using the word civic centre, but I do take probably the word community would sell that message a bit better. It's Paisley, we're respecting our history, it means good prospects, we're telling people it's a library, we're telling people it's a community centre, and it means we're open for business, come in and see us. If I went down and I saw Paisley Prospect Library and Community Centre, I would know what it is and I'd be really excited with it. I wouldn't want to see just Paisley, or I wouldn't want to see just Prospect Library and Community Centre. I think this is a way we can combine both of them. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Any further debate on the amendment? Councillor, sorry, Deputy Mayor
Feels like we're in danger of creating a donkey here, where we just all throw bits and pieces into a hat and tip them on the floor and see what comes out. And I think that it's whilst there are some really good conversations happening around the table, I don't know why this didn't happen 6 months ago. I don't know why all of a sudden we're struck with a lot of great ideas, where we've been through every single consultation process that we could have dreamt up and some we didn't even know that we had at our fingertips. So I'm really uncomfortable. I'm not uncomfortable with the suggestions. I am uncomfortable with making decisions of this nature in this context, and I don't know what we can actually do about that, whether we can, if we vote the whole thing down and it goes back for further discussion or whatever it might be. I would like to make a couple of points, just to pick up a couple of things that have been said. So, Councillor Groot said that, picking up on the deputy's point, that 1 to 8 is a where, not a what. But the other way around is that giving it a name is a what, not a where as well. So I don't know whether that actually resonates with me that much. I think they're kind of 6 to 1, half of the other. Councillor Harris, I really like the passion behind what you mentioned there, and one of the words you used was respect. I think that we're in danger of disrespecting the people who've been involved in this process over a long period of time, particularly the Community Reference Group. So I'm conscious of the impact of this late change has on them. I also agree with Councillor Green's point that the discussion at the recent workshop wasn't robust. There was 3 members of our team not able to contribute, so we're here. So I think right now we're in a really difficult situation. I think the worst thing we could do is to go ahead and concoct a name now just to get it done. If there's any way that we can vote this down and then bring it back to a proper workshop discussion and maybe refactor how we inform ourselves as to what the right thing to do is, then that's what I'd be in preference of.
Thank you. Further debate? Just briefly from the chair, because it could be interesting. Sorry, Councillor Barnett.
Yes, so this is on the amendment as is.
Yeah.
All right, then keep in mind there's being forecast a further amendment. I just think that I'm most probably inclined to agree with more the forecast amendments, in that I've had time to reflect and talk to other people, but I also keep in mind what Deputy Mayor has said. So my thinking is that I would like us to have this suggested, a suggested name is the paying the Hospital Library and Community Centre, and to take back to our quick reference group for discussion. So that's my thoughts on the whole thing.
Thank you. As I suggested, speak from the chair, because it might be a split like this one and a foreshadowed one, and what people might do in parts later, if someone requested to be in parts. In fact, I'll say from the chair, I'll take it in parts to make life easier. The discussion we've had has been long. It's no point really defending that it's been short. The staff would be scratch their heads if we said that they've put this to us at the last minute. We've known for a long time that this is going to be an issue for us. We've had a discussion over a long period of time. The consultation was done at the Spring Fair in October. That's a while ago. In fact, some would say that's a long time ago. We had the discussion very early about calling it CLIP just temporarily, because we couldn't agree at that point. Somebody wanted to put a plus sign in there, but I won't say who that was at this point. That didn't get up. So we've known about the naming of this place being an issue. It's sensitive for a very, very long time. And some could claim 4 years, because that's how much notice we've had to get out of the Thomas Street Centre. So let's not be surprised. The second thing is sometimes decisions are difficult, and the legislation gives us a pathway to be able to make difficult decisions, and that is a process of debate formally, and then the decision-making process with arms in the air on a yes or a no. And sometimes it's uncomfortable, but that is the process. That's how we finally crystallise what we want to do and make it effectively law. So I don't resolve from that at all. It needs to be done. That's the third thing that needs to be set. This place needs to be given a name. And I don't think it's appropriate we delegate it to the staff, CEO, to go and sort out, so we can all stand back and say, well, that was a silly name, why did you choose that? It's got to be our decision. We're elected to represent the people, so let's stand up and get on with it. It's our job. Now, having said all that, it's not easy. I think there's been an excellent speech tonight. It's hard to disagree with much of what anybody has said. because I think, 1 to 8 is nice and simple, but I agree, it doesn't mean a lot. It will need to have some words after it. I agree that that saying Painsy has a whole story to it, which is an opportunity for us to talk about the very origins of the place name, the place that is our key suburb and the name of the city. And I think that's a good story to tell. And I think it's a story that links our more modern past with our not so modern past and creates a different future for us. I think that's a really good thing to do. And it's a great opportunity for us to see and opportunities to name major civic things, call them infrastructure. They don't come around very often. They certainly don't come very often in this council. Those of you who've been around a while would know it's 40 years since the decision was made to split off the old Institute Library and put it over in the Thomas Street Centre. It's 40 years since our staff have worked out of one office. It's a long time, longer than that, since we named our key reserves, Prospect Oval, Broadview and Charles Payne, even though we're trying to dual name now. So these things are rare, very rare opportunities. So I don't think we should think that it will be easy. I don't think we should treat it lightly. And in my view, I've been probably more convinced by the non-128ers than the 128ers at this point. And I worry that 128 is a pathway of least resistance. And I worry that a path of least resistance is a poor compromise in terms of all the opportunity that sits before us. I listen to other speakers talk about it. I have a great deal of comfort with that. And all the Kaurna language opportunities that have been put before us, it's probably the most simple one we've ever had put before us. And that makes it not easy for me as a mayor, I'm not suggesting that. It makes it easy for us to tell the story because it's accessible. It's a relatively accessible word. Now, having said that, there are a couple of logistics issues. One is, how is the sign going to fit? Well, fortunately, the staff and the consultants have worked very hard at making all the signs of any substance within the building all vertical. They're not horizontal. As it says toilet, everything else is 4 metres high, it seems. It says Newmarch Gallery or whatever it is, library or whatever, town hall. They're all vertical. You might remember from the presentation before. Turn your head on the side to read it. So I would have thought Painsy can fit out the front of the vertical sign and match the inside, or it can fit some other way. I don't think that's a big issue. That's a design issue which is dealt with in a subsequent process. The issue of whether it has words attached to it or not is a different one. And I am twitching between on that. I'm deeply aware that we haven't asked the staff to test that. We've not asked our reference group to think about it at all. And we run a risk of coming up with a name on the fly tonight that might not reflect the best way to describe whether it's a civic centre or a community hub or a great place or a Painsy click or something else. And I think then it comes down to a process that says, as difficult as this is, and if we need to get up and make a decision at some point, I'm not sure we've had the best of advice about what we would call it after the name 128 or Painsy or something else. But in conclusion, I will say that my thinking is a little driven by what we've called the Thomas Street Centre over the years. We thought we had a pretty simple name for it, not me, predecessors, called it Thomas Street Centre, and not many people use that name. They call it the library, and everything else hangs off of that. So I'm deeply aware that Painsy on its own may struggle unless we spend considerable money on it. I am open to something else being attached to that in smaller letters, but I'm not quite sure what that is, and I'm not quite sure we're ready to make that decision tonight. But I'm very comfortable in supporting the amendment as it stands, with an open mind about what might need to be attached to that, either in a foreshadow amendment or a process that says we don't vote for it now, but we ask the staff to go and come back with something that does give us some options to vote. Thank you. I thought that would be helpful in case there's a split somewhere. Any further debate on the amendment? No. All right, there is no summing up on an amendment, so I now put that to the vote. Part 2 being amended, as in exactly the same as part 2 in the paper that was the recommendations advertised publicly, simply to change 1 to 8. Sorry. Question, Councillor?
Oh, sorry, I was just voting, waiting.
I'm just making it really, really clear. Really clear what we're voting on is the amendment. Simply changes 1 to 8 to the word. All those in favour? All those against? Hang on, something went up and down pretty quick there. All those in favour?
No, David, you're wrong. It's only 7 people. The amendment, yeah.
Yeah, I know, I counted, but something went up and down very quickly, so I'm going to do it again. All those in favour of the amendment? All those against the amendment? The amendment is lost.
Can I call a division?
Amendment? I think so, there's no restriction to it, yeah. So the division's been called. Our process is that the division is a new vote. The old vote is discarded. So those who are in favour, they still all stand. The negative stand. So all those in favour indicate thus by raising a hand.
That's not right.
Notice again, all those in favour of the amendment, please raise your hand and have your names recorded.
Oh, we don't stand, it's it.
The negative stand.
Why are we raising the hand?
You've got to know who you are.
Well, you will, because I won't stand.
Right.
Yeah.
I can change my
All
mind.
those against?
I can change my mind when I can.
Sorry, councillors, we changed this around a few years ago.
For good reason.
For good reason, it doesn't flow as well. Thank you, the motion is still lost. And I'll take it that there was a foreshadowed amendment from councillor.
So again, changing part 2, well, the rest stays the same. Changing part 2, well, that Payenthi to Payenthi, Prospect Library and Community Centre.
What about you're going to refer it, click on the reference group?
Oh. To click,
Reference group. Before we go, make that on.
that's a bit,
Councillor, your amendment, make sure you're happy with the words.
now, if we want to send that back to the, because obviously following some discussion to the click reference group, how are we my best to add that in there? Just sorry, because that was one thing I just...
It's a really good question. Thank you, and if I may just give you some liberty here. There are a number of
Certainly.
One is that you vote this up or down. If you vote it up, no need to ask the community reference group anything because we've made the decision. Secondly, if you wish to make sure this goes past them, you would need to change the word substantially to ask them their review and to bring it back to the further council meeting. The option is that you simply vote this down and you vote part 2 down and go away and give us some thinking and come back with some further options. There are 3 options, councillor.
Yep.
You, whichever amendment you have.
I'm going to leave it as is.
Speak to it.
No.
Thank you. Do I have? Sorry, I'll ask the mover and seconder if they're happy to incorporate the change. If you mean, yes or no?
No.
Okay, becomes an amendment. Do I have a seconder? Back.
I will speak to it. Look, the motion before us is common sense. I think we've...
Sorry, councillor Babbitt. Yes. We don't have 2 amendments very often because you're a speaker because you seconded the first amendment, you're deemed to have spoken to the actual motion.
It's only me.
Paul, me, what about me? Had enough of what I said.
So councillor Barnett, only you understanding the second.
Point of order there.
Point of order is?
Point of order is I had the floor when I made the first amendment. It should not go back to me because my time hadn't expired.
No.
So no, because you can quote a section of the Act you may refer to.
On 36 part 2.
No.
Well,
You want me to look up what that is? Well, I hope it's something that's, you know,
We work for Dixon every week.
It's called the blood.
Councillor,
Seriously, I don't have the right. I don't have the floor.
no. No, you've deemed to have spoken in full upon moving it. Yeah, and speaking in full, not just the amendment, but as it's substantial speaking to the motion. So that's your taste in terms of speaking of this matter, unless there's another amendment, which there might be, if you just let me get to
Councillor Barnett. Is that okay? We'll do it. Right. Councillor Barnett, are you happy to second?
Yes, as the last person. Yes. Look, I think, as the Mayor has said and other speakers have said, it's fair enough. We've been, umming and ahhing, going this way, going that way. Well, we're going, some of us are going this way. But I don't think, there was some, in some of all the discussions, there has been elements of this, discussed. So I don't think it's all getting that too far away from the last few years where this, has sort of been tossed around, except for the, 128. Now seems to perhaps be a bit more, or who knows, depending on the way the vote goes. But I think that this sort of, in the same way, it has been pointed out that our Civic Centre, Council Chamber, whatever you like, Town Hall complex, is one of our longest and longest in terms of history, in terms of the community, and as one of those, valued, loved places, whatever we talk about in our strategic planning, in our strategic plan. So I think in the same way that we have named 3 other very important community places, namely Broadview Oval, Prospect Oval, Charles Kane Reserve, and in the same way as we have given them another alternate Ghana name. I mean, it's quite clear, isn't it? Broadview Oval, right? You know what you're going to. Same with Prospect Oval, same with Charles Kane Reserve. Well, now we're saying, let's be quite clear what we're going to. We're going to Prospect Library and Community Centre, and it's got painting in it as well. So I think I'm firming up, and I said I have to discuss this, not with a whole lot of people, but just to sort of test things. And some of those they're members of the Click Reference Group. But I do think that we can endorse a naming. We're not saying that this has to be absolutely it. I think if there's a real Click Reference Group comes up and says, no, we're violently in favour of whatever, I mean, that's the reason why, we actually have a reference group. But I do feel we could, this could be a test. Now, we're saying we're endorsing it. We're not saying this is absolutely it, set in plastic or steel or concrete, whatever the sign may be.
Sorry to interrupt. This is a bit of motion.
Well, you can always undo definitive motions if there's a big uprising out there. But who knows? It's testing the waters. It's what we're doing. We're taking a bit of a punt here as leaders, right? So I commend you to test the waters a bit further and think about this amendment, right? It's in line with our other policies, as I said before. So let's say we're going to the Prospect Library and Community Centre, right? And it's also a nod to our Ghana naming process that we've had with 3 other major places in our city.
Thank you. Any further debate on the amendment? Councillor Griffin.
Thank you. Look, thank you to the motion. It's going to sound somewhat contradictory, but I'm not going to support this motion because I think we are starting to play in fairly dangerous ground, which is making things up as we go along. We had 2 options tonight. One was 128 and one was painting, and I was willing to vote on one of either of those 2 and support the decision of council. We're now doing exactly what Deputy Mayor mentioned earlier in terms of we still haven't landed a name, and we're starting to edit that name on the run. My preference is option 3 that the Mayor outlined, which is recommendation 2 is voted down, and we actually go back to workshop where all elected members, or as many as possible, are there, and actually have the debate that we're trying to have now, but we're confined by meeting procedures, which is making it really hard. I'd prefer to have that debate about, is it PNT with something else? Is it a dual name? Or is it just something that's not PNT? I would much prefer to do that in a workshop environment where we can actually have a conversation rather than what is really a stifled debate when it's meeting procedures. So I'm absolutely supportive of the word PNT. I will support that. I won't support this motion just because I think it needs to go back to that conversation. I think Councillor Barnett's comments about we can go back and undo this motion. Absolutely, we can technically. That will take another 4 weeks for us to rescind the motion, by which case I presume staff have got on with the ordering the steel or the foam or the whatever, or the design work. So I think it is a decision tonight, or it's deferred until the next meeting, subject to a workshop in the meantime where we actually determine whether it's PNT Prospect Library and Community Centre, it's a civic centre. We just can't have that. We can't have a conversation for this debate or a conversation. I'm just concerned about that.
The special council meeting.
We could have a special council meeting, and we do have one in the diary, I think, for a week or two, so it gives us a bit of time maybe to do that. That's a very, very good point. So that is an option that comes back. But that would require us to vote down this recommendation 2 plus the substantive recommendation 2, which refers to 1 to 8. So that's, I would rather go in with PNT as the recommendation that we've got, but this, if we vote down, obviously won't allow us to do that. So there's a bit of a risk here that that the council does actually vote down the substantive motion of recommendation 2. So I'm clear in my head. I'm not sure it's clear coming out, but I won't support. I actually support the word PNT. I actually quite like Prospect Library Community Centre, but I just think the fact that we're kind of making it up a bit as we go along, it just needs more conversation. Which is the point I made when I first stood up to speak to the motion initially. That we just. The fact that we're still doing this, we've been on this now for just over an hour, means that we actually aren't ready to make that decision. And rather than make it, then try and rescind it, and then try and make another one, I think we're better off voting down recommendation 2, both substantively and that's amended, and go back to a very quick conversation where we can have, as Councillor Deputy Mayor Larwood mentioned, a robust debate about this, and come back to something which we all agree to support, which I think is a preference that we all support in the name of such a fairly significant piece of structure. Rather than what's happening tonight, which is everyone has a slightly different view and everyone's trying to work things on the go. So I absolutely support the motion, I support the amendment, but I won't be voting for it on the basis that I think procedurally we should set about.
Thank you. Any further debate on the amendment?
I understand here.
She speak to it, yeah.
Look, let's not be scared of making a decision. I think, we can consult. Prospect Library and Community Centre, the building is paid there, it's nice. It's a sound decision, and it's exactly what meetings are for. What we're having is a difference of opinion and a lukewarm response from a marketing/signage solution. And like I keep saying, that signage is delegated to the CEO. So we're naming the building and, how it appears on the Google search and all the rest of it. And what the signage does is delegated to the staff and the CEO, how that works. Like I said, I was interested in the signage, the landscaping, as much as the numbers out the front and that kind of thing. So I think PNT, Prospect Library and Community Centre, honours what it is, and we've got a respectful Indigenous name, and as the Mayor said, we can engage with our community about great prospects. So I think that's a really good outcome. So I'm not scared to vote for it. I will vote for it, and we'll see how it flies.
Thank you. Councillor Harris.
Wow. Totally support it, but I'm going to vote against it. Mainly because it gives us the opportunity. I'm happy with this end result of the name, but then I would like to see PNT in bigger letters, Prospect Library Community in smaller letters, still out in front, all together, so one does stand out over the other. I can't do that because I'm not ready to move amendment because we've run out and that sort of stuff. So I'm going to oppose it and then oppose the whole lot in the hope then that we can come to the next workshop and come back. But both two now and two previous. I do support them both, and with the Adabit Prospect Library, but I'd like to see that in the smaller letters underneath. Can't do that with this motion, so I'm going to oppose it for us to have a discussion where that will be my argument in the discussion.
Any further debate? Just from the chairs, there's a little bit of a dilemma here that worries me, and if someone can convince me, then that would be good. I kind of agree with Councillor Harris that there needs to be some design work done on this to make sure. I think Inti should be the dominant name. I'm thinking banner size and the other words run along the bottom of it. But that's a design exercise. That's not what we're deciding tonight. We're not prescribing that the words be small or large or village or not village or whatever. That's down the track. That's something we'll delegate to the CEO, and no doubt she'll bring it back to us because there's a great deal of sensitivity about it, right? That'll come back for discussion because there's probably lots of options about how to do this well. The issue tonight is procedural, whether the elected body, us, whether we think we need to do any further consultation on this and what that consultation would lead to, or whether we don't, and we just make a decision and then we're nibbling around the edges about the issues such as size and shape and colour and whatever. In my view, I have a bit of a mixed view on this. I'm still thinking. I'm not uncomfortable with the amendment. Not uncomfortable. Maybe community hub rather than community centre. I mean, these are sort of buzzwords that come and go. Whether it needs the word prospect in it or not, but if you don't have it. So, it would be good to have the staff do some more work around what a subtitle might be effectively what we're talking about. But we don't have that in front of us, and that's a good reason to say, hang on, just let the staff go away and road test this with CRG and themselves and other places and make sure that those 5 extra words are the most appropriate 5 extra words. And on the other hand, if we wrote this down, there might be enough people here just think, I've had enough of this, I just want to vote for 128. And then we're going to have a difficult problem in trying to work out whether the rest of us are happy enough and whether we have to launch a rescission motion process, okay? So on balance, I'm thinking, you know what? If it's a split vote, I'm likely to go with the amendment to stop there being a subsequent process that might undo this. I'm not against there being some fine-tuning by the staff in terms of presentation design and that will come back to us in due course. But the key issue the staff have expressed to us before is that they need the key name of this place sorted to help move forward the interior signage. I very much doubt that the interior signage needs all the words PNT, Prospect Library and Community Centre attached to every sign. There's just the key word that needs to be taken into consideration with the key sign inside. In fact, I might answer that question. Director, the shortest question and the shortest answer. So in other words, the interior signage can get moving with this amendment, and the balance of the issues around it in terms of how it works on the outside of the building can come back to us in due course. And I think the deputy probably put it quite succinctly. It's just an order for a bit of a sign. I don't quite think it's that simple, but we don't need this sign in place until the first week. But the interior signage is what we had to get sorted, and this would enable that to proceed. So balance, I think, split. I'll be voting in favour of the amendment, and I've expressed why. Thank you. Any further debate on the amendment? If not, that concludes the vote on the amendment. I'll now...
Can I say something?
Councillor Brooke, brief question.
Brief question is, you made reference to the words hub and deleting the word prospect. The question is, CEO, does the amendment allow enough flexibility to make changes to those words, should we wish to do that after we've made the vote? Because that would determine maybe my voting decision and maybe others.
Yes.
It says from now on.
If you made a decision in relation to the name, then I'd suggest that we wouldn't be able to bring back another report and another recommendation.
So that's it.
This would be it. We can do the design work, but for you to change the wording on it, you'd have to go through a rescission process.
Queer question.
Thank you, Councillor Brooke. Ask your question.
My question, perhaps through to the CEO, is the actual amendment wording has that the Penny Prospect Library and Community Centre with the name identified commenced use from now as a transition away from the project name of Click. So my question is that enough wiggle room?
So yeah, it's a good point. This does not name the building. This provides a name to use as a transition away. How you wrote the recommendation, or you and your team, how will you interpret this if it gets up? Whichever again wishes to rise to your feet.
The intent was that we would start using this name now and move away from Click in all of our correspondence with the community. So whilst the wording might be a little bit clumsy, it was the intent that this was the name and we would transition all of the paperwork associated with the development to this new name.
It is, so the intent is clear. From the CEO's perspective, that's how to interpret it. Further question?
Yeah, I was just going to check if I have as a mover of amendment, if I can sum it up. Do I have a sum up or not?
No, it was a simple answer. Yes.
Can I ask the question then?
I remind you, Councillor, read the question.
Sure. To alleviate Councillor Harris's comment, Harris's comment, if we put the name Payne Prospect Library and Community Centre, we are only naming the sign, and the way it is designed will be then brought back by the administration. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Sorry.
The council has delegated the signage package to me. However, given the sentiment within the room, I would be loath to make a decision in relation to the artwork on the building or the name, so I will be bringing it back for your consideration.
Both of the name. Beautiful.
Well, thank you. So, unless there's another question, there being none, that concludes debate on the amendment. All those in favour of the amendment?
That one.
Come on.
All those against the amendment? The amendment is lost.
Conference division, yeah.
Yeah.
For division. Ready, Sam? Those in favour, please indicate so with your hand. In favour? Have your names recorded. Hold them up there. Those against, please stand. Have your name recorded.
Library and community service sounds good.
Put it to you, I thought. Thank you. The motion, the amendment is still lost. We now revert back to the motion that was before us. The suspended motion is unchanged. And I'm not sure who's left to debate that now.
Hello, question.
Councillor Barnett.
Yes, is the presiding member going to split the two?
Yes, I've indicated I will take it in parts.
Thought so.
But Councillor Barnett, before you resume your seat, did you wish to speak to the motion? Sorry, you are a seconder, so you can't.
Yes, yes, I think that,
You can't apparently. You can't apparently. Yes.
Has everybody spoken? Yeah. Really? Yeah, that's it. Run out of options. So, Councillor. Well, no, hang on. I'll speak again from the chair and remind us of our options. Taking in parts enables us to vote the report, but to vote for or against 128. It seems to me could be wrong. There could be enough numbers if 128 is passed for that to be undone. Just in the sentiments expressed in the room. So part two would seem sensible to vote it down. It's not going to be a split vote, but anyway, I just thought I'd let you know. If it does get voted down, I assume the staff will go off and have listened, probably taken some notes somewhere about how many people support the principle of Payinthi being the key part of the name, and then go and finish and work out some way of determining what the balance of the name is, presumably via a workshop. Let me just ask, CEO, is it possible to schedule, should part two here not get up, a workshop in sufficient time for you to deal with the interior side?
Thank you for the question. I've had a bit of a brief chat with the director, and I would split the external signage off the contract package, so we'll only deal with the internal wayfinding signage. There will be a slight additional cost to deal with it that way, but given sentiment, I think it's the only way to do it.
Thank you. See, I would assume that it's quite a different sign to the interior sign, so I'm not sure that, well, maybe I'm making more of a comment. I don't think that the cost difference should be great.
No.
The interior signage is flat, sort of 2D, the external signage I presume will be 3D and lit and have to resist wind and need footings and all sorts of stuff. So there's a high risk of an additional cost simply because it's a different contract would be. I'll take that as a comment. So that sounds like that's a process that can be dealt with, and we'll take in parcel as suggested. And I'm a final speaker on that. There you go. So back to Deputy Mayor Larwood, if you wish to sum up.
When you said you were the final speaker, I was getting concerned there. And no one's concerned. You know, the funny thing about this is that we went through this whole process for a long period of time to try to avoid calling it the Community Hub Library and Innovation Centre. And then at the last minute, we almost got back to that. The wording of Councillor Ripps' amendment was so close to that, you know, I find that bizarre. We've worked so long and hard to move away from calling it something like that, which I thought was actually a pretty good name, and we almost came back to it. So that was pretty strange. A couple of things. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion, as the Mayor may have suggested, that everybody around the table is happy with PMPAD. There's at least two people who supported 128. At the previous meeting, Prospect 128 also had support. And I remember at the March meeting, people saying, look, we can't make a decision. There's too much, there's not enough cohesion, not everyone's on board with this, so we can't make a decision, and we're in exactly the same position now as we were then. We've had a bit more of a robust discussion tonight, which has been great, but we should have had that between last meeting and this meeting. The way that we did our robust debate has really led down this process, and I feel like we might have got there tonight if we'd had proper debate about it. I'd like to actually, I'll be voting yes for the first part and no for the second part. Can I say that? Okay. And I think it's probably, we've talked a lot about the community reference group, and they seem to be over there, and we've talked a lot about our feelings and sentiments, and we seem to be over here. I don't know why we're not working together on this. I'd like to see, if we go back to some consultation, I'd like to see some of these names floated, some of these variations floated, and I think that we could get on board together and we can hear what their concerns were and what their ideas were, and they can carry out. I think that's probably the final piece for me that will solve this problem. So thanks everyone for contributing to the discussion. I think it's flushed out a lot of good points. We haven't quite got there from my perspective, so as I mentioned, I'll be voting no to part two, and I look forward to discussing it one more time, potentially if it gets voted down at an upcoming workshop.
Thank you. That concludes the debate. All those in favour of part one? Against? It's carried unanimously. All those in favour of part two? All those against part two? It was lost unanimously. We'll leave that with the staff and move on. Thank you for the debate.
It was hard picking the Melbourne Cup winner. I thought it was hard picking the Melbourne Cup winner.
That's not too
Thank you, deputies, for your presentations tonight and your interest. So we're just looking at the East Wave side, and there will be a staff are present for that matter. So when they do come, I might ask you to go here. Oh, okay. Been waiting. Sorry. Confidential item, not normally three-quarter confidential item, but I notice we've got no one from the press here and now no one in the gallery other than staff, so those matters were sent out to you under separate cover.
That's all right. I can remember.
Item 18.1. So first of all, leave the meeting to pull forward item 18.1. All those in favour? Against? is thus carried and pulled forward. Thank you. Item 18.1, just catch up with my papers here, sorry. Recommendations, so we'll move part one of recommendations, which is if we go to conference. Is somebody happy to move that way?
So moved.
Alan,
Thank you. Councillor Harris, to speak to it.
I thank you.
Further debate on part one. I conclude the debate. All those in favour? Against? Is carried unanimously. Thank you. Now, you wish us to... Item 13.2. Not being pulled forward. No special guests. We're just resuming our spot on the agenda, and let's see, here we go. Amendments to footpath trading, business use of a road policy and guidelines review 2019 has been brought back to us. So we have to come forward.
Yeah. Yes, I think it, from all our previous debates on this and that, I think we've finally sort of got everything in there. Well, I hope we have. I know certainly from my point of view, some certainly in there about the with the people with sight issues and all that disability sort of stuff. And hopefully this one nails it on the head.
Thank you. We'll have a second. Councillor Backer, you speak to it.
I'll second it to get on the floor, where I'll probably be looking to take it in parts for approval. So I think it's one of these things that's really important to have policies. There's a difference between obviously policy and guidelines. And so the issue was around consultation. So when I have we're looking to put forward policy and guidelines, and on the whole, most other councils have similar policy and guidelines. I'll go and have a look and see what other people have done. And one of the things that sort of raised a bit of an alarm bell with the sort of previous policy and guidelines we put out is around consultation adjacent residential. And I'm not against that, but what it didn't do, and I don't think what these guidelines really do, is define what adjacent residential is. So we have businesses in a commercial zone, they're on our footpath. So there's a difference between someone trading, so for example, Cafe Chena, which is no longer there, they have outdoor trading, but it's on their property. So that's a totally different discussion. But when you're actually looking on the footpath, some of the consultation in the Local Government Act is to do with correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was a material difference. So we're actually looking to change the road. So in the case of some of the ones we've seen recently, if you extend the footpath, you're actually changing access to vehicles, which is around, movement of vehicles and delivery trucks, and there's an importance in that. But it's also the distance by which you've got the residential, a dwelling or a residential zone. So we've got instances where we have actually got residential dwellings in a commercial zone. So are we consulting with them, or are we just consulting with people in a residential zone? And I don't know if the guidelines really define that enough. So at this point, I'll be listening to debate, but I'll be supporting the policy. I'm nervous about consultation because I looked online, I still don't think we've moved the consultation policy. No.
So take that question. Our pre-existing
consultation policy still stands. Yes, yeah, it still stands. So this is a great initiative, and I've always been for activating dead space. So we've got nighttime economy, we want people out in the streets. However, there can be amenity impacts. Now that's often not to do with allowing or not allowing, it's to do with how it's managed and the people. But we can give it, but we can also take it away. So I think one of the things around this whole policy is that we've got policy and guidelines, but I don't know, there's wording in there, is it strong enough? And I'll be interested to hear debate about how we actually police it once it's there, because it is a privilege, not a right, to have footpath activation, and we do it when it benefits the community, benefits the vibrancy, not when it becomes an issue. So I think we've got to really walk that tightrope. And that's another thing on the guidelines. I did make comment at the last meeting about the, I think it was page 65 or something, yeah, I've got the numbers wrong. There was a plan that reads an elevation, and I hope that can be managed out. So on page 31 of the policy, it says cafe and shop, and lo and behold, the tables and chairs read as an elevation. It's incredibly confusing, and I'd like that to be managed out of the guidelines. So I'm just...
if you're talking about figure 1 and figure
Yes.
2, then looking like one figure.
Yes, it just doesn't make sense. And I did actually forward through to the administration sample guideline that did clearly express and did actually clearly show going around the corner in plan, as you would expect with any planning documents. And I think that's probably not acceptable and not useful. But I don't know if it's by moving all those parts, this is written in stone on fat wood. I'd be more inclined to vote for the policy as it stands and leave it as room for manoeuvre with the guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tobacco. Any further debate on this item? Councillor Ripp?
Yeah, just a question again. Just bear with me 1 second. I'll get it back to it. Well, first of all, do we have any incidents where cafes or mini cafes or restaurants actually occur that don't abut the corner of a main road? So,
yes.
Okay. Well, I don't think this, and unfortunately it's frozen on me again, but it stipulates that here we go, sorry. It says public consultation will come into effect where the area requested for a footpath trading permit is on the corner site off a main road positioned directly adjacent a residential zone. Well, if we've got examples or could have future examples, so for example, I know at the moment my local hairdresser down the road operates as a hairdresser at Kaboo Hair. Let's say one day that becomes just a mini cafe. That doesn't come into play here. That is in a residential area. So our policy would mean that we don't have to consult with, say, a place like that going and adding outdoor dining. I think the community involvement section needs to be clearer, and that statement needs to say something like public consultation will come into effect where the area requested for a footpath trading permit has any effect in a residential zone. It needs to be stronger, because otherwise it's too open to... That's my opinion anyway. I don't know how we can word that. So it means if it's going to have any effect in a residential zone, so if it's on a commercial zone, it's the middle of Prospect Road, I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about in any if it's going to have any impact in a residential zone in terms of on the corner, in the middle of a side street, wherever. I just think we need to make sure that that's clear. No, I can.
Thank you. So can you just give us your reference points within the document?
Yes, certainly. Page 15, item number 5, it says community involvement. I think the first paragraph needs to be tighter in that, because I don't think that deals with, if we have...
So that's the report. I'm happy to disagree with the report that it has no effect once the motion gets up. And you refer within the policy and the guidelines to where there's a...
Oh, sorry. So, well, yeah, sorry, that's a fair point. But if that's in the report, it says in the report, public consultation will come into effect where we need in the policy and guidelines to have that changed so it comes into effect at where it's going to impact any residential zone.
Okay, thank you. Anything further?
Do I need to move that as an amendment? Do I need to, where I know it's part 5, the community involvement, I'm quoting from the report, but do I need to then move an amendment or add an additional item, change the policy so it stipulates that it's in affecting any residential zone?
Through the chair, I would think you would need an additional, if you wanted that to come into effect, you would need an additional trigger in 2.8 in the policy on page 21. You'd need to have some definition about impact of an outdoor dining proposal on a residential zone.
So that would need to be added there.
That would be an additional item. So that would have to be something like 2.1, 2.8.3.
So, sorry, Director. It's already a clear part.
Page 21, yeah. That's page 15.
Have you indicated to the current speaker that he should seek to amend part of the policy and therefore you'd think the guidelines on the floor in the middle, I mean...
I'm just, sorry, through the chair, I'm just advising on how he could get his desired position through, and I would think that would be only through amending the actual policy rather than...
That would be the place that needs to be amended.
That would be the place where the amendment is required.
My advice to the current speaker is that the chair, that being me, would not be terribly excited about elected members trying to amend policy word by word on the floor. If you don't like it, don't vote for it. Amending the motion is one thing, but amending bits of attached documents gets difficult to manage.
Yep, give it that advice.
Anything further? Further debate?
Two things. One good thing, one bad thing. I think it's exciting to know that we've got 290 seats available outside for people to sit down. I think that's a great outcome overall. And anywhere you go around Adelaide or interstate areas, whether they're sort of main streets or smaller streets, the vibrancy that's created by outdoor dining attracts people. On the downside, and as per the email I sent around recently about a clear breach of the policy as it relates to smoking in a designated area, we've got to have the facilities and the wherewithal to police breaches and non-compliance. And as Councillor Harris pointed out, marginally tongue-in-cheek, but also made a good point, I don't know if we have the wherewithal to deal with breaches, and so if we haven't developed a operational plan for dealing with breaches, then I think we need to address that, not necessarily as part of this document, but as part of the once if this is adopted, then I think that's an important part. Otherwise, we are opening up a Pandora's box, which will impact negatively on the positive vibe that we're trying to create, and that's going to make it harder to continue with the good work that we're doing on Prospect Road and then to extend it out to other areas that we're discussing as well. So I'd just like to be reassured that we do have the ability to police breaches and adequately deal with them, and also intend to deal with them in the terms that are outlined in the guidelines. So I guess that's turned into a question.
Which is, more precisely?
So more precisely, are we confident that we have the structure and the plan and the resources to police police and deal with the consequences that are outlined in this policy?
Through the chair, yes, I'm confident that we do have the resources to deal with those breaches of this policy. We've actually contacted Andrew from Mezamasi to say that the smoking situation is unacceptable, and our enforcement area is able to require that that is not continued, and the issue is apparently the state government actually issued a fine. So we've got to actually make sure that the state government issues a fine for that particular infringement. But yes, there is some issues between state and local governance, but we can certainly give the warning and then get the state government people to undertake the fine. But there's those fines, $75 for smoking an outdoor in a dining area are there to be enforced.
Okay, so a subsequent question. Are we planning on embarking on an educational process to ensure that our traders who take advantage of this policy are aware of the policy, the guidelines, and have the opportunity to comply, as opposed to claim that they weren't aware?
Through the chair, we weren't planning on a precinct-wide education policy because there's only been one restaurant that has been flouting the law there, and it's just a matter of actually enforcing it with that particular restaurant.
Yeah, I think in reference to the point raised before, there has been one flouting the law flagrantly. We should just to confirm it wasn't any fragrant things that were being smoked. But I think that it wouldn't be a difficult proactive step to ensure that everyone was aware of what we were planning on implementing.
You further debate?
I've got a question, Dave. Who carries out the risk management assessment in regards to bollards, for instance?
Thank you. Director.
Okay, thank you. That's carried out by a team. It's a team approach, which is people from business and innovation, but also people from assets and infrastructure who are looking at both traffic issues and also risk management issues. So it's actually, we actually get a group of people within the council together to look at that and come up with a risk assessment.
So just a further question then, if because quite a few have not got bollards,
yes,
and are right on the cusp, if you like, to be hit, whose legal responsibility would it be? Would it fall back on the council or the cafe owner?
Through the chair, we've looked at this. A lot of councils are in exactly the same position, and as long as we state the risk and we look at implementing risk management processes, then we are covered by the mutual liability scheme. So as long as we've actually taken the right risk assessment and put those processes in place, and we've got that through that team approach, then there can be accidents, but we are covered as a council as long as we've got that process in place.
Further debate? Just briefly, I can answer the bollards instance. The risk assessment approach is the right approach as far as I'm aware. When we looked at Prospect Road design before, the Department for Transport took a risk adverse position, and before we knew it, in 2 blocks we had 171 bollards proposed. And it would have looked like a prison or something to stop tanks getting through. So we made a decision to take a different approach, and they said that's fine provided you assume the risk of managing that. The difficulty here is that if you worry about people sitting on a footpath and want to protect them, you only do so much. The bollards will stop the person in the car hitting a wall. Bits of the car can come off and fly and hit people who are sitting behind the bollards. So bollards aren't actually that good for protecting people sitting on the footpath.
I know that.
The second issue is, if you have a look at evidence about how many cars have come off of Prospect Road in particular, just think about that one, and struck a fence or something else, it's very, very, very few. And I know, like you now, councillor, you look at these sort of things. You probably weren't before you were a councillor, but now you do. In my time on council, I've known a car to leave the road, I think, twice in between Regency and Victoria Terrace. And both of those are down near Blackfriars for reasons which I can't explain. There's now a camera at the school intersection which had nothing to do with that crash, which now is the third highest revenue raiser in the state in terms of cameras. Nothing to do with the crash. They just put a camera there just in case. We've had no incidences of cars leaving the road where we've got outdoor dining licences. So that's the risk management that I think is being managed pretty well based on evidence. In terms of the location of these things and how sensitive we are to consultation, I tend to agree with the seconder and the subsequent speaker in that the guidelines and the policy are not quite right yet, and therefore I'm not in a position to support them becoming our policy and our guidelines. For instance, the guidelines say that the consultation should only be conducted under these circumstances, which tends to make it pretty clear that it won't be conducted under other circumstances. And I think Councillor Rick gave a really good example of a house where it's got turning into a cafe with an outdoor licence, which sounds to me really cool. I mean, I love that, a hairdresser that turned back into a shop of some sort. That'd be great. But it doesn't fit within our policies and guidelines very easily, because you could argue that it's not adjacent to a residential zone. That's what the policy says. It doesn't say main road, which is why I asked you about specifically which. The actual policy doesn't mention main roads, but it does say adjacent to a residential zone. It's within a residential zone. So I think Councillor De Backer made this point really succinctly at the last episode around this, that graphics, pictures, drawings tell the story a whole lot better than trying to prescribe this purely in words. And I think learning from other councils, which is again, Councillor De Backer made that point really clearly, there's not a new wheel. Can you just please go and find out what's working well elsewhere and replicate it? And I believe they had a distance, or they had a radius, or they had some way of defining when consultation should be undertaken and when it may not. In the words around that, I think we also want some advice on. So I think that the policy and guidelines are certainly significantly improved. I too got confused about the figure 1 and 2 of page 31, and I'm pretty used to reading technical drawings, so if I'm confused, and Councillor De Backer, who loves graphics, pictures, if she's confused, I suggest the average person who's very good at making a coffee or a cake or a meal would get very confused. I could be wrong, but I think they would. So I think there's still more work to do, and unfortunately, I'm not in favour of parts 2 or 3 at this point. But I would like to ask a question around the part 3 of the fee of $20 per chair. We did have a significant discussion around fees or not fees before, and you advised us that it costs more money to try and collect the fees than to have the fees. But there's now a suggestion here that there'd be a fee of $20 per chair. Can you just give us some advice on how was that arrived at, and what's the evidentiary basis for some logic to get us to support?
Through the Chair, it was fairly straightforward. In the last report, we mentioned that we estimated the cost of administering this particular program was around $6,000 based on staff time, and we looked at a fee related to the number of outdoor dining chairs, and that was if we applied $20 to that, came to $5,800, which is very close to the cost of administering the program. So, and we also thought that the program had been fairly successful in that through waiving the fees, we had boosted the outdoor dining, I suppose, design on the street, and therefore we thought we had achieved our aim, and we thought that there was also a feeling around the chamber, though we didn't actually vote on it, that we should re-examine the introduction of fees. And therefore, we came with a figure of $20 a seat, and a seat is easier to measure than measuring the square meterage. So we thought that also related to economic benefit.
Thank you. Excellent explanation. Any further debate on this matter? If not, Councillor Barnett, wish to sum up.
Yes, and if I may check with the presiding officer if the motion is going to be taken in parts.
Yes, happy to do so.
Yes, I think there have been some excellent points raised, and looks like we've possibly still got a little bit more work to do. So let us go and vote.
That concludes debate. And I said not taking part, so all those in favour of part 1? Yes, it's carried unanimously. All those in favour of part 2? Yes. Has lost unanimously. All those in favour of part 3? Yes. Has lost unanimously. All those in favour of part 4? Against. It is carried. Okay, thank you. Move on to item 30.3, columns of shopping precinct state beautification. Recommendation on page
42. What page was it?
42, sorry.
42. I'm just getting my thing to it. Sorry, just give me a second.
Somebody happy to move?
Oh, I'm getting enthusiastic.
Happy to move the recommendations to Senator
Yes.
All right.
Look, I obviously moved this as it's a flow on from the motion I put up at the December council meeting. I do believe that we need to do something in this space. The shopping centre is incredibly, and the precinct, particularly with the Druid Dance Hall and the Oval precinct surrounding the shopping centre, is it's dilapidated and it's tired and it needs, in my opinion, a lot of work. I would just though like to ask the administration one question. I believe Councillor Harris might have some further questions, but my first question is, will that $50,000 that's been budgeted, does that include seeking the information and the works, or if it's going to be, as it was initially flagged as a stage upgrade, is that $50,000 only to look into it and then to do works later? If I can just get some clarification around that $50,000 figure.
Question.
Through the Chair, through our schedule of works, the proposal is that we would actually implement the works as well. So that 50,000 would be the preparation of a concept plan, community consultation with property owner, businesses and residents, and delivery of the project as well.
Right, that's the intention, Director. Can I just sort of flavour and rephrase the question? Who will be doing this work, and is there a risk that if we approve this that we'll go and engage very good people and very good designers who'll spend $49,500 and there'll be $500 to put one tree in, which technically is implementing the plan? Or could you give us some enthusiastic response in an alternate way?
Certainly. The intention is that we believe the concept plan should probably be within the vicinity of 10, maximum 15,000. Having conducted a quick site assessment myself, there's probably not a lot of scope, so it's probably going to be a lot of greening. I anticipate it'll be more tree planting than anything on the North East Road and Cassie Street on both sections of the shopping complex, because it's divided by Cassie Street. So I anticipate it's probably going to be a lot of greening. So the intention is that the 50,000 will cover the concept plan, our consultation and delivery of the greening.
Thank you. Councillor.
Look, thank you for that clarification, because leading into this, I just wanted to make sure that 50,000 wasn't just to do the prep work, because that would be quite a lot. Further question I have: will that? How is administration planning to do the prep work, and if the prep work finds that the job is actually that a lot more needs to happen, will that, because I know that we've got the end date as May 2020, now will that, if the project needs to be bigger than the originally $50,000 budgeted, will that delay the project completion, and will the extra money, if it's going to be a stage upgrade, will extra money then need to be funded into next year's budget?
Through the Chair, looking at the scope of works, I'm very confident that we can deliver next financial year, subject obviously to the 50,000 being endorsed. Should we have to go beyond that, which I doubt, I would be looking to work within the $50,000 budget, and I'm confident that we can deliver with that figure. However, in the event that it does potentially go over the 50,000, we will come back to council and explain that to you, and then seek additional funds if you wanted to proceed. But the intention is to deliver the whole project within the budget. Proposed budget.
Well, look, that being the case, and thank you for the clear answers to the questions there, and I can see you put a lot of thought into it, so I do appreciate that. Well, with that in mind, I'm really happy where this is at. I believe that the area needs activation, it needs beautification, it needs vibrancy. And with this $50,000, if that's what you deem, through the chair, if that's what the acting director deems to be is the amount needed to deliver the whole project, then I'm quite comfortable where that's sitting. I do look forward to receiving further information about, particularly after you've met with all the shop owners, the property owners, including the owner of the Druids Dancing Hall. I'm really excited to see, if this does get approved, the scope of those works and what that actually looks like. The reason I asked about the 50,000, if that, and you've mentioned greening, the reason or maybe might lead to further questions, but if art needs to be included as part of that, then there's no mention really that $50,000 will be including whether it's a physical art structure, whether it's painting. So I think that needs some further works and some further thought, because it's not, I mean, as much as yes, it's about beautification in terms of greening, we actually need to look at the actual centre and the precinct around, and art and painting, or in the form of painting, could be something that needs to be considered. And that's why I was just wanting to know whether what that $50,000 covered, and if it's for the total amount. So I do think it needs to be, the project needs to think beyond just greening on its own. I have received quite a number of correspondence either by phone or contacting even on social media. People are really excited to actually see in the community where this goes. This does address the feedback I got in the council election, that council spending a lot of money sort of west of Main North Road, and this area is old, dilapidated. It needs some investment and some love, and I've received a lot of positive comments about this, where it's heading, and people are excited to see where it does go. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Harris, wish to speak to it.
Yes, a couple of things. I'm just going to go into the discussion. I'm going to support it. We're going to the discussion page on page 44, and you go in 6 and you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th paragraph down. Got the trees and various things in Cassie Street, east and west. Cassie Street runs east and west, so it'd be north or south, really. And so lucky enough, you talk about the 4 big trees, so they're on the southern side, and the other side where the hall is empty. But to follow, and this should go, I believe, when we done the thing with Edwin Street and others and things like this, the next paragraph, or the second one after it, talks about the traffic data at 2011. I think if we're going to do something to any project, we should then either set up or get and have recent sort of materials, because there's been a lot of changes in that area because of accidents further up. People have been cutting down there. In this 50,000, in the whole project here, the only thing I would have liked to see and don't expect to see in this is, after our meeting the other Wednesday night with residents further up the road, that my view is we've got a shopping centre, Foodland, that's there, and now through the planning, the Foodland at the back has actually taken up the loading part of the back. So Rosemary Lane will actually become an unloading place as well as others. That's what I've gone to see the planners about. And so I would love to have seen a one-way streets, both in those 2 streets around, in part of this. The 50,000, and thanks to the director, acting director for want of a better word, that sort of pointed out that hopefully about 10 to 15,000 is the design of it, because I unfortunately don't see that much work there just due to the size. You know, if we got 4 trees, there's only going to be a room for about another 2 on the southern side of Cassie Street. There is areas on the other side where the Druids is, but the Main North Road itself, Main North East Road itself, there'll be a couple of trees but not much else there. Come down to the next street and there'll be nothing, because you only got 1 metre wide footpaths of the thing. So I'd love to see something. If an art thing goes in there, or that glorious thing we got in Galway, as opposed to the thing on top of Prospect Road, that'd be good, but I'm sure that would have to come elsewhere. But hopefully something can be done. But I'm a bit like the director. There's really not much else, not even with flowers. We don't have flowers on our side, but not even with flowers. It's trees really that we're going to fit there. But it should look good in the end result. Thank you.
Councillor Barnett.
Yes, taking on board with the supermarket, the new owners there, I just would like to check through the chair. So has there been any planning submission with any newer developments there? I'm thinking in terms of the car park is extremely denuded of any vegetation or any trees, and I didn't know whether through our planning approvals there, if there's any room for negotiation.
Thank you, Director.
Through the chair, look, I'd have to check whether or not an application was lodged. In looking at the site, it may just be building work. If it is just building work, it's exempt from the planning approval process, which means there's no ability to address any landscaping issues. But I'd need to check that in terms of what was lodged, what was required. But if it was change of use or building work, there's no ability to do anything with landscaping.
Yeah, and subsequent follow-up is also with that some of the residents there have observed, because they're quite keen to observe, that there are issues there with their loading and unloading. They're already blocking each other and can't get in and out, and they've narrowed it. So I don't know, if there are any, when staff or that are meeting with owners, if some of these things can perhaps be fed back to them. I don't know if it's too late now or not. And also about the traffic thing, I think that some of the residents there, particularly in Cassie Street, are keen that whatever's happening further north with the traffic consultations, all that are going on, because they're quite concerned that any decisions made up there may affect a bit further down. And also in the talking with the owners, perhaps pointing them direction, so it's not the council doing everything on their particularly on their properties, about there's any opportunity through our community grants program about with artworks, with murals, just some more of that sort of type of approach.
Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor Group, sorry, in the back.
Just two questions, or comment on the question rather. The comment is around the schedule of works. The dates of, mid-November 2019, sharing concept came with shop owners and property owners, and then mid-February 2020 delivered the civil component. That leaves 3 months for approvals, consultation, tender, procurement and commencement. So it just looks really tight to me, so that's just a comment. And I know obviously trying to finish it by the end of the financial year, but it just seems really, really tight. The question though is around the civil component of the works. Does that include irrigation of any greening that we might do?
Through the chair, possibly if we need to. However, I was thinking more of a civil component. I'm just, I guess, brainstorming in myself, wondering if there's some sort of a pavement treatment that we might be able to do to separate that residential environment from that shopping precinct environment. Because I'm conscious of picking up on Councillor Barnett's comment about the loading in Rosebery Lane. So there are trucks coming in and out of there. So we need to just be careful about where we plant. But I'm wondering if we can do some sort of a pavement treatment that might differentiate the residential from the shopping complex. So that was my intention there. But certainly irrigation, the intention would be to include irrigation for any tree planting.
Thank you.
Councillor Becker.
I was going to move an amendment but I think Councillor Barnett's comments about the smaller activation grants and things like that, because I think it's a really important point. I actually, before Councillor Rick had mentioned about art, I actually written that the report was quite short-sighted in what it was bringing to the table, and I think this is a perfect opportunity to be really creative. I don't think we give up because it's harsh. I think we try hard because it's a harsh, hostile environment. And I think things like alternative paving options, it's got some fabulous stogie poles that would take some lovely mosaic art, instead of thinking some Tetris or whatever, you know. What we want to do is make people pay attention and think about it in a different way. And I think if we can present the image, we might get buy-in from some of our shop owners. And look, I mean, we've only got control over what we've got on, you know, our side of the footpath on the road. But, you know, they can incorporate vines or softening or shelters on their property to give it a different feel, and sort of reiterate the popularity that, you know, I suppose Prospect Roads enjoy with that improved amenity. So I'm looking forward to seeing some consultation that involves art, and I would, without putting it in a motion, because really it's up to you know, the people in that precinct, but I think it would be an absolute shame if we have a public arts, now I don't know if the $27,000 art budget's going to that thing and click, or we've actually got money to pay with, but if we do have money to pay with, we should really be focusing the arts people at this precinct, well, certainly on North East Road. And I don't know how in council, this artists never like being told what to do, but I don't know how we can focus their attention and actually make them give us a solution in this precinct. Because I think we're going to have to look beyond just greening. I think we have to look at creativity as well. So outside of putting it in a council motion, I think we have to be quite strong with where the. I don't know if I can put forward an amendment now I've spoken to it. Can I?
Well, you've still got another minute or so to do it.
Okay, well, I might move an amendment to the motion. And now I've got these words here. I guess someone else should fix it. That council commit no less than 1/3 of its public arts budget with consultation to the Collinswood Shops precinct.
To the Collinswood shopping precinct, isn't it? That's the aim. Check the words. Just check the words, councillor, this is your amendment.
No less than 1/3 of
This precinct.
their proposed public, because obviously we haven't endorsed the budget yet, public art budget with consultation with residents and businesses. What might move them to bit messy.
Yeah.
No less than 1/3 of the to the Collinwood in the Collinswood shopping precinct with consultation with residents and businesses. So if they say, well, we've dedicated this, if you want it, they don't want it, then find somewhere else to spend it. And I think that's and the reason I'm doing this is because we've been, well, certainly I've been asking for years and years for the arts team to give creative solutions in, I'm not saying, you know, challenging areas is probably the best way of putting it. And if we've got a couple of ugly stogie poles that we can easily attract some attention, there's also opportunity for pop-up placemaking activation, and that might just be liaising with community groups to have an event there, you know, a car park caper on a day where, you know, on a Sunday afternoon when something's closed or whatever. Just let's get creative about it and activate this sort of challenging area.
Okay, thank you, councillor. I'm just tweaking some of the words just like we just to get the
Make it
intent.
more appetizing.
No, that's your job. I'm trying to make sure it's
Councillor Smith, no less than
more.
1/3 of the proposed arts budget for 2019-20.
Let's catch up with that after the word budget. I've added the consultation with local residents and businesses, and I've added the word local to make sure it's not interpreted by the staff as all residents. That's your amendment?
Yep.
You've run out of time with that. Sorry, CEO, just to clarify, sorry, 2019 is just inserted without any reference to the proposed public art budget in the 2019 business plan. Sorry, CEO, you had something else to do?
Okay, this is two budget lines apparently. It's one capital budget and one.
Toby commented.
Thank you for the opportunity, Mayor. The suggestion of utilising funds through the public art budget, we would take that to community engagement through the end of business plan process. So I know you want to consult with the local residents and businesses, but it is a broader discussion with the community of the City of Prospect as to whether they want to commit a third of about $25,000 to this one area, and that would be from the capital budget, not the operating budget.
Okay, thank you, CEO. Your time has expired, Councillor.
Yep.
So I'll just do what I've done before in this meeting, is ask the member to incorporate, and that would be Councillor Rick. Are you happy to incorporate?
Absolutely. Yep.
And Councillor Harris, the seconder, happy to incorporate?
Yes.
No, you deeply about this because you've been paying attention, so that's a yes.
I'm just looking at the fact that there's not a Stobie tax.
Seek leave of the meeting now to incorporate the change. All those in favour? Against? That's incorporated. Thank you. Councillor De Backer out of time. We now move on to, are there any other speakers? I'll speak to this item because it was a big part of my election campaign. And I just want to encourage the CEO to encourage your staff to take a very joined up approach to this. We have a report from one of the magical cylinders of excellence within the organisation, but there's no, I think Councillor Barnett's question has revealed there's not enough oversight from the planning department, I presume. I understand that the house behind the block of shops has been demolished to make more car parking as part of the Foodland deal, which is fine by me. The house is, it's not terribly flat, it's not of any historical heritage consequence. But that gives rise to an ability to incorporate landscaping and change the appearances around the area. So I think the plan team should be sort of cognizant of the objectives. There's also an opportunity to incorporate art, in fact, for the extra bit of the motion there. That should certainly be pursued. And I think let's talk about changing pavement types, and that should be also pursued in terms of an overall master plan for the site. Remember, the motion originally says phase one. So you don't have to do everything in this phase, but certainly getting in the bigger of the plants to get a start would be a good place to begin. I think that the greenery needs to be the ground level stuff as well, which has made a huge difference on Prospect Road. It's not just trees. And it's made a big difference in Northern Prospect Road when that's been landscaped and all designed internally as far as I'm aware. And finally, the team that handles the liaison business should be heavily involved in this. And I don't think they have at all, over here. I really think that should be encouraged because there may be people who want to do a bit of outdoor dining and try and work out how to make that work, how to make it look pretty. I think they all should be, united in terms of saying, how could you reimagine this place as a bit of Prospect Road, but in the east? What would that look like and how can you bring that alive? If you go there at the moment, it's a fairly conventional 50s, 60s shopping precinct with a bit of tickling up in the northern part of it. But I think over time, this could be a really, really attractive little community hub. And certainly look a lot prettier than it does, and there's been some indications about what can be done. But I think it needs a joint approach. If it's just an approach from one cylinder of excellence in the organisation, I think that would be underselling the opportunity. And I know, CEO, you've been working with the CEO of the adjacent council, the town of Walkerville, to have some consideration given by them of what they might do on their side of North East Road in this area. And I think that's fulfilling our partnership approach we've agreed to adopt with them. But I recommend the motion to your. Any further debate on this item? Councillor Brick, wish to sum up?
Yes, I do, and I'd also like to thank the CEO for engaging Walkerville as well. I think it's really important, and I know from being there that both our residents do use the space and people come over from Walkerville, so I think that's a good common sense approach there to engage the Walkerville Council in their thoughts as well. overall, what we need to realise is for the east, this is an entry point into our city, for the east part. I would like the staff to be, as well, to be creative and innovative in this space. Go for it. Make it innovative and creative. Well, I want people to come to the space, not just because they're going to the Dulwich Bakery or they're going to another shop there, but I want them to actually engage with it and feel like it's their space. Let's again, using that buzzword, let's be creative and let's involve people in the community. A lot of the businesses gave me feedback that whilst the supermarket hasn't been there, and I know it's been delayed for the various electrical issues, the businesses have told me that they have really struggled to survive beyond the supermarket leaving. And when I've further asked the questions about why they think that is, they said it's because if anyone is driving down North East Road, it looks unattractive, it looks dilapidated, it looks a bit derelict, random people don't stop there. And that's what so they're getting great support from the local residents that live nearby, but they also said they need more local residents to use the space, and they need everyone that's driving down North East Road to see it's an attractive space and a vibrant space, and for them to stop and support the businesses as well in the area. So I really think we can do a lot in this space, and if we can do a lot for 50,000, well, that excites me as well. But I really do believe we can make this a really good, gateway into our city in the east.
Thank you. Please vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Next item is third budget review, pages 48 to 49. We're happy to move it in its current form. Speak to it. Second, if you may allow you to speak to it. Any further debate? There being none, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? It is carried unanimously. Item 13.5, Vaughan Row investigation results, recommendation on page 77. Somebody happy to move it in its current form? Councillor Barnett.
Yes, I could say promises. Well, it's time to collect with the Department of Planning, Transport and Infrastructure. It's incomplete as it is, therefore it can't really do the job that it was meant to do with the road safety and the additional cameras. So I just, it's really saying that we want part 4 real emphasis.
Thank you. Have a seconder. Councillor Larwood, expecting Larwood to speak to it.
Yes, special thanks for saying for the report. It left me feeling very empty, I think. It kind of feels like that line out of The Simpsons where they say, I'll try nothing, get them all out of ideas. It kind of almost sounds like the previous motion where we were sort of throwing our hands in the air and said nothing we can do. It also sounds like we wasted a whole bunch of money a while ago by approving a part of the process which was destined to failure from the start, and it just doesn't feel like we can accept that this is what we've got, this is what we're stuck with. I don't know whether there's been any decent investigations as to increases in traffic, or there's a whole lot of facts and figures in here referred to, such as the 2,500 cars per day dating back 2 or 3 years, talking about numbers of crashes and so on and so forth, Grand Financial Bicycle Boulevard, a whole lot of things, and you chuck them all together and it doesn't feel like we've been successful at all. The Bicycle Boulevard, essentially, we put some signs up and some wayfaring signs, and it hasn't, there's been nothing else to encourage cyclists to take that road, and there's certain parts that I wouldn't, I'm a cyclist and I wouldn't necessarily ride down because they are so small and crowded with the number of cars moving through, the number of people walking their kids to school, the number of people parking in side streets, 2 or 3 streets away from the school, then walking their kids down to the school, cars coming up from further north along Churchill Road, up Beatrice Street to avoid Churchill Road, Vaughan Road, because you can go from Beatrice Street to Litchfield Terrace without stop and without, almost then without fear of being caught by a speed camera. I can't recall the last time there was a speed camera on Vaughan Road. And it goes through various parts, being quite nice to being quite erratic. The trees, footpaths, all those kind of things like that are all what go into making the area attractive and user-friendly. We just talked about that. The shopping centre, and I don't really think we've tested ourselves or stretched ourselves with the investigation here at all. So, there's probably not too much that I can do here or that we can do, but I just wanted to note that there's been a bit of work put into this, but I don't think we've really tested our powers and maybe the cylinders or the silos that Mayor Loughlin referred to before haven't been brought into play here as well.
Thank you. Further speakers? Councillor Beck.
Just briefly, just to, I suppose, support my fellow councillors' frustration in this spot. I guess we promised something and it hasn't really delivered. There are other treatments for, road calming, even at certain times of the day. There might be ways that we can control traffic, but it's really to break up that straight bit, as said. People are using it as a sort of speedy bit, and you're also getting the inevitable congestion around the school. We've had the same issues around Blackfriars, the same issues around Roseworth. So I think the schools are kind of in a different space, but I think if we had been able to roll out the other plateaus, that may have improved things, but it doesn't mean we can't put the pressure, I guess, on the planning and transport infrastructure to see if we can get results if we don't ask and we don't get. So, community motion.
Thank you. Further debate? Councillor Group.
Just two comments really. The first one in relation to the plateau near the primary school. I think the plateau hasn't actually slowed traffic down by the school. I think it's the hundreds of students trying to cross the road at the plateau which is slowing traffic down. Sometimes not even that works. So I think the plateaus have had a zero effect. In fact, it has made it more confusing for students because they feel it's a school crossing at the same height as and that's created some angst by students and families. The other comment I just want to make, and I think Councillor Deputy Mayor Barwick's made a comment similar to mine or my thinking. When this came to us, I remember very, very clearly, a number of us, I'm trying to remember who was around the table at the time, I think it might have been Councillors Harris and Barnett, probably only, and someone came to us with this idea about using Vaughan Road, and I remember very, very specifically asking the question, this is a major collector road, why would we be doing this on this road? And absolutely one had the intent of slowing traffic and maybe reducing it, but it was never, the question was asked on that night, and I remember very clearly, what effect is this going to have on Vaughan Road? We promised by, and granted, other staff are hearing it more, so it's a different staff group. But staff and deputy representatives talked to us about this wonderful transformation that would happen to Vaughan Road and how wonderful it would be, and butterflies and unicorns over the place, because it would just be a different road. And I think what we've got is nothing but the same, except a few humps, which are probably easy to go over faster than our side. So I'm really disappointed. I don't know where we go with this, because I presume another couple of plateaus is $1 million plus maybe. I don't know how much plateaus are. I've not procured one for a while. I just don't suspect that's the answer either. I'm really disappointed because there's a lot of work into it. Work went into it from local cycling groups as well. So we engaged specifically a number of people in that process, as you remember. And we've really got a bit of a wide outcome. So I'm not sure where we go with it, but just echoing what you said. But recognising the administration was very different at that time, so I'm certainly not contributing. Any comments anyone on the table on that way?
Thank you. Just for my part, I'll echo those concerns. We were told we were getting a bicycle boulevard in the 2014 election, I think. $4,000 allocated to it. It's cost more than that so far. The state has contributed more, and we've got less humps than we've designed in the consultation process. It is a very difficult road in a sense to work out how you would calm it, and part of that is in what the report says. It's a collective road. It's a really important road for our city. It's a bit like trying to calm the traffic on Churchill Road in a way. It's not Churchill Road, but how would you do that? I think what we've seen is a failure in a number of ways. I think the plateaus are put in very, very expensive and don't act as devices that slow you down. I think both I and the CEO were pretty disappointed, is probably an understatement, when we saw the finished result. It's led to one of the very few public graffiti acts I've seen on new infrastructure in my time. And I struggled to argue with the intent of the graffiti artists, really, I did. But we can't allow that stuff to stand. This is a result of it's like a camel designed by, was it a camel's a horse designed by a committee? It seems to be that way. And there are a number of issues with Vaughan Road that aren't just about traffic. And they are that it's a major overland flood route. It has to allow flooding to come down the hill and go somewhere useful. So there's a lot of flooding that's supposed to run along it in a major event, or be able to transfer across it, because not all the streets go straight across Vaughan Road. So it actually has this very, very important overland flood issue it has to deal with. It's a very important pedestrian route. It's one of our most popular walking trails in the city, and yet the pedestrian amenity along the road is pretty poor, even though we've finished doing the footpaths up. Some of them are narrow, the crossfalls a bit too much, the curb heights aren't that great, there's stadium poles in the way, trying to squeeze some trees in, of course, because that's what we like, but they're in the way. It's very difficult. And the crown of the road is also in the old design, and it's, it interferes with the nature of the flat-topped humps that were put in that I mentioned before. The crown of the road means that you're going from a high crown onto a new design plateau, and it's essentially the same height. So it defeats the purpose. So what I think is, and look, there is some art and some story files there, but it's trying to make a silk purse out of a sow's ear in a number of ways. What's missing, in my view, is a master plan approach to what Vaughan Road could and should be. And I thought that was the nature of the motion moved by Deputy Mayor Larwood. This is responding to. And I agree, the sentiment of disappointment. The report is short. It doesn't pick up the sentiment that was requested. It seems to miss the point in that sense. And I would hope, CEO, that it takes some of this feedback and work out how do we come to a different outcome, where we have a 10-year plan or something for Vaughan Road that improves the pedestrian amenity, makes it a great way for kids to cycle or walk to school, makes it a really good pathway for cyclists to avoid the main roads, looks beautiful, and still acts as an important collector road. I think all those things are possible, but in the absence of a joined-up master plan or joined-up vision, we're just getting patch on patch on patch, and it's quite disappointing. And I think we could do a lot better with a more joined-up approach to our thinking. So I'm not going to argue with what's before us tonight, but I think it's a disappointing response to what I thought was a broader remit in the motion that gave rise to this report. Any further debate? Councillor Barnett, would you like to sum up?
Yes, and perhaps it may be that council administration, as well as writing to Parliament, Planning, Transport and Infrastructure, I can only make a suggestion, they contact Michael SA, who were at the table at the time that this was being discussed, as well as the local Prospect and Bassville Youth Group representative. But the problem is, if the project's incomplete, then how can we measure any success of it? At the moment, we're measuring something that's about half done. It is comforting, I think, to observe that we still have a lot of pedestrians, we still have a lot of cyclists, we still have a lot of families escorting their children from school, various scooters and all that sort of type of thing. So it hasn't scared people away, but I'd just like to see it complete, and then perhaps it can be measured, and then perhaps it can be, done in the halls of deputy as how not to go about it. Anyway.
Thank you. I conclude the debate. All those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. And we'll leave it at 10. We are approaching 10:30. We have a number of items to go, item 13.6 and 7, and then 4 reports of information. Someone want to pull something out?
And then one more confidential item. So seek a mover for an extension of time.
Move that way to 11 o'clock.
With the meeting be extended to 11 o'clock. There's a second. Councillor Backer. All those in favour? Against? It's carried.
Just don't like things, you know. I'll stay. I'm not going home.
Carry on. Streetscape upgrade, recommendations on page 81. Maybe move to its current form.
Yes.
Councillor Barnett. With respect to it.
I think it's fairly straightforward and that we really want to get on and finish these plex.
Thank you. Do I have a second? So the back with respect to it.
Quickly again to Councillor Barnett, get on and finish it, and it will be satisfying to get from top to toe done.
Thank you. Further speakers, Councillor Root.
Look, I absolutely endorse those sentiments of getting on and getting it done. But yet again, we have a plex project which is going over budget, which simple things like falls and footpaths weren't taken into account in the original tender documentation. And I think every PLEC project I've been part of since being in this council has always been over, we've forgotten something, or we haven't remembered this path, or we haven't actually budgeted for some of the work. So I don't know that we can do much other than what's been recommended to us, because we want to get it done. But it's just, and it's just really frustrating for me that we now $360,000 that we need to find, which is cost forgone from something else. That we need to put into this, which is it's good and proper and we should be doing. I'm absolutely supportive of the work. But why we didn't understand the falls were the way they were, why in 2017 we knew the price was $800,000, but we didn't think to ourselves, well, hey, it's going to be more than we're actually coming to do the work, so let's actually put the council. It's this, that's probably going to be that. Right, we're just working real time rather than what we actually going to spend on some of these projects. So as I said, I say this every time a tech project comes up, and we either forget or we don't budget for the ancillary work. The same thing happened on the northern end of Prospect Road. We're now doing this even further north in terms of the work. So I'm just a little frustrated about it. But we'll support it because I don't think there's much other option.
Thank you. Further debate? Councillor Harris.
Just perhaps then with the previous speaker, take on board when we do the next one, which I think might be Regency Road, could fit into that category, parts of it. So we do it, because I remember the discussion with the previous director here, Greg Georgialopoulos, about the falls, the trees, all these things on the eastern side. And I was embarrassed then because I knew nothing. And it looks like it's all come to pass. So I unfortunately endorse using more money.
Thank you. Just from the chair, I ask a question. There's a reference in the report about the work at the intersection. I wasn't quite sure what that meant. Are we intending to spend much money around the Regency Road intersection with this design?
No, basically the project is starting from the northern boundary of Regency Road up to, the northern intersection from Regency to Angwin Avenue to the northern boundary. So the intersection itself does not come into play.
Right. And can you answer the cost per metre in this seems to be substantially higher than the cost per metre for the sections done to the south. Is there some reason why, other than the
no, this is basically topography on the east side. And the rest of Prospect Road, as I understand, south of Regency has been quite flat. The northern section of Prospect Road, the east side, is where we have quite significant steep grades that we have to address, and there are some stormwater issues as well that we've had to address around Angwin or Murray Street.
And thank you. I absolutely support us doing the work. I agree with the disappointment expressed elsewhere that these things keep blowing out costs. It's a substantial blowout costs, might be 50% above what we had budgeted for this job. It's quite extraordinary, given what we know. I mean, the curve heights haven't changed in the last
3,200.
So these are the kind of people who use Curtin Channel. They might.
That's where they hung their
Uncle
boats.
Lewis will tell us next time about how they invented Curtin Channel, perhaps.
Or electric lights.
They didn't. So ever since they've existed, it's been a deep cut on the eastern side. So I'm not sure why that's new. I'm also a little bit concerned that I don't think any of us have seen the design at all, and I think that's a bit unusual. We would, particularly the ward councillors up in that neck of the woods. It's probably one of the uglier entrances to the city for a few reasons. One is that the trees have never had water, so they've always struggled. Second is that the topography gives rise to some very ugly curb heights. And third is that the soil profile on the bottom of Murray and Angler just doesn't support life. And we've never rectified that, and we should have. So there's a number of challenges there. I would have thought it would be good, CEO, for us to see what's happening, and particularly the ward councillors, just to get some feedback locally. Does that work? I'm not sure what consultation's been done around it either, because no doubt there'll be some changes to driveway entrances and those sort of things, and whether the residents are actually aware of what's going to happen. So just take those as comments. But I don't see any option here. You need to get on with it. And I just hope that those things can happen in parallel to the work proceed. And I'll leave it with you to make a judgment call on the risks involved in that, feedback from ward councillors and the mayor and local residents as to whether that will change the design and therefore the tender and therefore the contract, whether it won't, and you can get on with it. I don't know, I haven't seen it. So I'm a bit at a loss here to add value to that. But, I will note, as Councillor Woods expressed, it's a blowout and it's a substantial blowout, and I think that's not good. Fortunately, there's a saving somewhere. So what if there hadn't been a saving? There would have been a $360,000 would be the biggest cost blowout since the clip. I think we've got to get out of jail card, but I don't know that's an acceptable way to manage business around this place. I'm sort of twisting between, but I support it. Any further debate?
A question?
A question, because you've already spoken. A question.
Yeah, and I noticed that. Sorry, I appreciate this area of land had been up for sale. I'm not quite sure if that would impact the street interface. Obviously, that's probably confidential information at this stage. But I'm just mindful if there was an ability to stage it from maybe from the park further up, it might be an option considering. Consideration.
I want to read in Prospect Road.
Yeah.
That questions that been taken into account by
Last one.
Yes, through the chair. It is our intention to actually start from the northern end and work toward Regency Road, purely because we've got some very dangerous curb ramps there that I've actually raised as a high-risk location. So our intention was actually to start around Angwin Murray and work our way toward Regency Road.
Any further debate? If there's not, Councillor Barnett, wish to sum up. Thank you. That concludes the debate. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. Item 13.7, the Australian Local Government Association Federal Election Advocacy Program, pages 86 and 87. Somebody happy to move it as presented?
Yes.
So Barnett, wish to speak to it?
No, I think it's fairly clear what we want to advocate.
Thank you. Can second it? The Mayor, wish to speak to it? Any further debate? There being none.
Just briefly, I think it'd be really good when the CEO writes to the candidates to offer them also an opportunity to come to us at some point. I dare say most won't or can't, but I think it'd be a really good opportunity just to say if you want to come and address your elected members in the City of Prospect, you're more than welcome to. I don't think in my time in the Council we've ever had a candidate come actually engage with us prior to the election. Not many after. Yeah. Happy for that just be taken as a comment.
That's true. We've certainly advocated on Council's behalf with every candidate, every election.
Yeah, we have.
Uncle Council Meeting. That's quite right. Thank you. Any further debate? Taking Councillor Barnett, see no need to sum up. Please debate. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. Item 13.8 we've already dealt with. Item 14, the protocol. Item 15.1 of our other reports. The Eastern Region Alliance Chairman and CEO report. We wish to withdraw that report. No. 15.2, building reform under the PDI Act 2016. Did you wish to withdraw that report? No. Alexandra Street stormwater updates. Anybody wish to withdraw that report? I do, so I will. On 15.4, Community Hub Library Innovation Centre CLIC project update. Anybody wish to withdraw that report? I will for there's information to distribute on that item. So if someone move block on 15.1.2, so Harris, and seconded by Councillor Ridd. There being no voting, all those in favour, against, carried unanimously. Thank you. On 15.3, the Alexandra Street stormwater update, I'll withdraw. So I'll address the recommendation, which is that we receive and note the report.
Which one's that, sorry? Page 121.
15.3.
All right, thank you.
Alexandra Street, something have to move it to current form.
Oh, yeah, what happens if you say something?
Board councillor.
I'll move it.
So Harris wishes to speak to it.
No, because I don't know what you're going to say.
Very wise. Do I have a seconder? Right. Wish to speak to it, councillor?
Only just that I'm hoping this is going to fix up the very vocal residents' issues.
Yes. Some of them are well known to us. Okay, thank you. And speaking from the chair, because I withdraw it as is customary, the person who's through gets a really chance to speak. I have to say I'm very, very disappointed in this report. In fact, probably to express how disappointed I am. Council originally agreed to participate in the state government scheme to pull forward a project that was 4 years out in order to capture the financial benefit of accessing their fund via the LGA. For a short way of summing it up for those who are new around this place. This street was chosen because it was over the $1 million mark, which is another threshold the state government set. It's a major road in our area, it's very wide, needed substantial work. Council agreed to it also because it had some localised flooding issues, and particularly down the bottom end. And our express wish was that we would solve those flooding issues in the reconstruction of this road. Now, those of you who went down on a rainy day or since have noticed that the flooding is worse as a result of the project, much, much worse as a result of the project. The bottom end still floods and there's no design change at all. The water sits there until the very last minute of the draining, where it lasts, and the grading must be something close to a pancake fall. And the top 2/3 of the street have huge volumes of water rushing down them that seem to come from some spring underneath the top end of the road and scour out all behind the curbs and into private properties that are off the road, causing down the footpath. And really, I think it's in my view, I have to be harsh and say it's a very large failure of design and implementation. I've raised this matter with the CEO, I've raised it with anyone who will listen, that we need to resolve this, and this report tells me that we're going to do nothing, in short, and I just find that completely and utterly unacceptable. We're going to do nothing to fix the problem at the top other than fix something in Farron Street. We're going to do nothing to fix the problem at the bottom. And I don't want to go door knocking that street again, quite frankly. I've been down there, as Councillor Barnett has said, there's some pretty vocal residents who either are cleverer than us or something, but they know what's going on and it's not good. I have a question for the staff. I'm not sure who wants to take it and answer the question, but he makes a statement that there was an extreme weather event in November that gave rise to this localised flooding. And I just ask, where was that data drawn from, or where was that conclusion drawn from? What evidence is it based upon?
Through the BOM, Bureau of Meteorology data.
Can you refer me more specifically, Acting Director?
I can get the information for you, but no, I certainly haven't put it to me.
19th of December.
That's pretty interesting because I did go and look because I thought that's interesting. I wasn't sure about a November event that had some record. So I looked at the bomb data from North Adelaide, which is the closest weather station. And the November 22nd event doesn't even make the top 10 rainfall events for 2018, let alone this century, let alone since weather records were taken at North Adelaide. The Green Acres one, you could say maybe it swept through Mist North Adelaide and the Green Acres. It's not in the top 7 for the Green Acres. Regency Park, it makes the top 7. But that's just for 2018. It is by no means an extreme weather event. And I think the report makes a very serious misstatement about the problem by measuring that up or stating that that was an extreme weather event. There were 2 rainfall events that I visited and both of them were scouring the living daylights out of our design. And I just said at the outset, I can't tell you how disappointed I am about this report and the lack of action taken to do something with it, the time taken from those events to do nothing about it, and the action plan proposed going forward will simply lead us to having to clean up more scouring. All that dirt that's taken out from behind the curbs and gutters is going into our stormwater pipes, clogging them up, and at some stage it will cause a blockage in the rest of our network. I'm really, really disappointed about the CEO, and I recommend thoroughly that we do not accept this report in any way, shape or form, and that a further report is brought back to us forthwith, dealing with the flooding at the bottom third, which is not addressed in the $1 million proposal that we supported, and the flooding in the top 2/3, which is not addressed by this report in any way, shape or form. The flooding behind the curb, the flooding down the footpath, the flooding of the properties off of Alexander Street. In every aspect, this report is, I'm sorry, inadequate is an understatement. So that's my position on it. Happy for you to look at my bomb data and check it out. That's where I stand.
I have a question.
Question, Councillor.
Yes. My question is that can council get some rectification if the design, which I think the obvious layperson hasn't worked. So my question is, can council follow up with the designers and get some changes made that are not at our expense as a council?
Question, CEO.
Through the chair, by the time I'd come on board, this had already been tendered and it was construction had basically commenced. So it's, I absolutely take on board your comments, Mayor. That
So that's your answer to the question.
So my understanding is that stormwater was not actually incorporated as part of the design.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
My understanding, when I came on board in January, that the detailed design was pure road reconstruction with no consideration to stormwater, other than that top open channel.
So the answer to the councillor's question is we can't sue the designer because the designer wasn't briefed to worry about stormwater. Is that correct?
That is my understanding, but I can confirm that.
Thank you, councillor. Any further questions?
No.
Further debate? Councillor.
Taking on board the Mayor's comment of the words extreme weather event, this obviously relates to another item that was on debate tonight around Broadview, and I do urge the administration, when using the terms extreme weather event or extreme weather patterns or weather events, let's make sure they are really, really extreme and rare. Otherwise, it just, even though it's not the intent, it comes across as misleading, even though that's not, I know that's not the intent of the staff. But, you know, if it's not rating in the top 10 or top 7, I mean, it's not an extreme weather event. And I think that really, because using that terminology can sway debate, and I just think that we need to have a report.
That concludes debate. Councillor Harris, wish to sum up.
As I said nothing at the beginning, it makes it almost impossible for me to say something at the end.
You can sum up.
However,
So summing up what I said at the beginning in my silence was, I thought the weather condition was December the 19th because it was the last rain. The water that the speaker on the top of the table spoke about settled in the pond down the bottom. If you come to the water soak opposite my house in Balfour Street, we've still got water soak, and I don't want it to change because it's for the pigeons. That's been there since the December 19th run. It's a little bit disappointing what we've heard, and I might say that even though I'm supposed to recommend you, I'm going to vote against it myself.
Okay, that concludes debate. All those in favour? All those against? Lost unanimously. So I appreciate follow-up at some stage. Happy with that. Item 15.4, Community Hub Library Innovation Centre, the FLIP project update. Sorry, I've looked at our 11 members because I've recognised that within that report there's quite a bit of detail, including maybe the first time you've seen the designs for what's proposed next to the FLIP and on the depot site, both sales which are required to help fund the FLIP. And the drawings are really small, so I was hoping that we'd get to distribute some larger copies tonight. We have just this one set, please.
Well, I had actually anticipated there would be some ask the project manager to do that, so I'm sorry he has left. I can pass this around, but we can certainly distribute larger copies. Get that up to you.
Quick question and I'll ask them moving.
And it could be in a debate around the design.
I don't think we're going to be able to distribute anything further than what's in the report. So there's only one set here, so I'm happy that that gets circulated.
132 Prospect Road's going to the SCAP anyway, isn't it? Is it going to the stake? Isn't
No,
130?
it's the other one.
Yeah.
I don't believe so, Councillor. If you feel uncomfortable at some point, then feel free to do so.
I need to know which one.
Somebody happy to move? That's the reason I pulled it out. Somebody happy to move the report as it's put forward to us at item 15.4?
This one.
I'll move it together. And I'll just briefly look. I just also, when I was reading through the document, I have real concerns just about the furniture. So we've got some positive spin on the fact that, you know, we're reusing lots and isn't that excellent and all the rest of it. But my understanding is that we're getting no new town hall furniture.
No, that's not correct. So certainly there's some additional furniture going into the town hall. But of course, having leapt to my feet, I'm thinking there is new furniture going into the bed space, which is actually for the council meeting. I'll let you refer that to the director in terms of what will happen in the town hall, because some of our community programs will be run in the town hall.
Thanks for that. Through the chair, essentially the Eliza Hall has always shown pop-up furniture, but it's shown it as a below-the-line item. So the intent has always been to reuse library furniture for that as a pop-up space. That's Eliza Hall only. Obviously, there's new furniture going to Irish Art for those other spaces. And your chairs and
Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, yes.
Yeah, no, it was just around the actual town hall furniture. And look, I'm just mindful of the creep in some of the projections. You know, we were encouraged earlier on to go for the black butt floors and the timber treads and the building and all the rest of it. And I just hope that we're not stinking on what's the outcome for our community. So we're getting close to the finish line, and I commend all the effort that's going into the building, but I will be looking very closely at what we're spending.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Councillor Rich, wish to speak to it?
Not at this point.
Any further debate? Councillor Barnett.
Yes, just perhaps more by form of a question, just following up about furniture and that in the town hall complex. So are we still going to be using the horrible clunky trestle tables that we had previously?
Through the chair, the existing town hall tables and chairs are being disposed. So there are new chairs. I didn't think of those as essentially they'll be out of the way. There's 150 new chairs being purchased for essentially a gallery for the chamber upstairs and also for downstairs. They'll be in the furniture store most of the time.
So questions about tables?
The big circular
Yeah.
tables, they're not part of the new building.
And the other longer ones, and the other long ones.
Sorry, Councillor, your questions about tables, are they these tables you're talking about or are they other tables? Because the round ones were town hall ones.
Lovely tables. The other ones, that some of our community groups have extreme difficulty, especially if you're not a very strong over 50s. So they were the round ones and they also were great 10 long seater things as well.
So presuming the round ones aren't going to be there, do you reckon you can clarify what will be there?
Unfortunately, off the top of my head, I can't recall those specifics. I'm trying to rack through the 50 odd pages of it in my head, but I can't think of exactly what tables are proposed to be housed in the furniture store that will be ruled out in there. But I'll check that and I'll
Give us more space and time. So it's in the memo around about what's happening in the town hall. That's distinct from office areas.
Thank you.
Further speakers? Sorry, just very quickly, you know why I put it out. The report covers off on what's happening on 132 Prospect Road. You've seen the scheme in a close-up, it does actually call itself 132. Just and what's happening at the depot site. I mentioned to the CEO, I think it's really important that oversight around those two sites because they're council land. And when something's on a private site, we have the ability to approve, or the state government does, and we can blame them for what they do and ask if we're the regulator about our constraints around regulation. But where we're selling the land, we have a lot more influence over the outcome, and we also have to accept accountability for what gets built on that site. It's never a straightforward private sale. So I think it's beholden upon us to be aware of what's being proposed. And if we have any feedback for the staff about how they should negotiate particular outcomes, if we're not comfortable, then they should hear those from us before those things get approved or locked in, rather than afterwards, which I think would be pretty sad. So I asked for some copies of those documents. Those of us on the audit committee would notice that there's a comprehensive set of documents provided to the audit committee members, but not for the elected body called the council, which I thought was a strange balance of information flow there. So I've just asked the CEO, is it possible for us to receive some sort of briefing about where it's at, and both with regard to the depot site, which is fairly straightforward, but has some heritage consequence on it, which I think some of us would want to be across. And secondly, with the Prospect Road site, which I understand has gone through the government design process several times, and therefore I'm trying to keep up with where the hell it's at. So could we have some briefing?
Through the chair, I spoke with the project manager this afternoon about providing more detailed information on all three projects. We're certainly able to do that via memo with some detail attached. We have to have a think about what type of briefing is and isn't possible. There are some issues under Local Government Act and Development Act in terms of what council can and can't do with planning matters, which I know a lot of you are across. So there are some challenges with, particularly now that we have 3 DAs in the system, with what the council's involvement can be, because under the Act, the council must delegate those planning powers to its cap, and that's where it sits. So that level of influence is significantly constrained, but the ability to share the information, certainly by memo, is not. So we will do that as an absolute starting point. I'm very much aware of the intent of what we would like to achieve and receive. So I am looking into that and started those conversations today around what's possible in terms of briefing beyond that.
Thank you. So that assurance we'll get something over and not much. Again, I just reflect, it's fair enough for the audit committee to get a full set of drawings, so I know can't let members see them, albeit members of the CAP may have a different, well, they'll get an even more complete set at time, but
I'm sure you can manage that. The other thing to note in the report is what's already been noted in Budget Review 3, which I was astonished nobody actually put out when it was discussed. There are some substantial movements in cash flow around that report and in the clip, because of course the settlements have been delayed or about to be delayed, which I think is not a good outcome. The cash is coming late. Cash coming late means otherwise we would need to borrow more money to fill the gap. But fortunately the project's running $2.8 million late, so it's okay. Well, I don't find that okay. Just let you know that. I don't find it okay that the project's running late. I've expressed that many times in the past. Not so much hung on to it now because I don't want it to speed up as they're putting in detailed joinery and detailed finishes and tiles and floors and paint. It's not the time to speed up, but we are running late. I do not believe the builder that will have it finished by the 4th of October, given that they are $2.8 million late. I'm also not happy, and I've expressed this too, about the settlements being late and being allowed to extend. I can't control everything, neither can any of us, neither can the staff, but that is in the report and you should be really aware of what the implications of those financial movements are. 2.8 million late, 2.4 million settlement late. They're big numbers moving around. And, as I say, I'm surprised no one pulled out and asked the questions. But comprehensively dealt with in both reports, and I assume that's why we're all very comfortable. And other than that, I commend the report to you and acknowledge the challenges involved in trying to last these ends together, but also repeat concerns before from Councillor Back and others that we still don't have a design for the front footpaths, we still don't have a concept for the plaza, we still don't have a concept for the design for the back. And I quite frankly don't understand why not. And I'm pretty frustrated about that, as you all would know. That concludes my section on this bit. Anyone else want to debate this item? No? Do we have Councillor Back, if you wish to sum up any of that?
Thank you.
That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. The next item is the council diary. Deputy to note. General business of an urgent nature. Is there any? Hope not. Good. Confidential items. We have the Community Service Awards 2019, item 18.2. Somebody can move part 1 if we go into confidence. So Rich, would you speak to it?
Can I just check if we'll need to extend time? I'm happy, if so, I'm happy to 11:10 to ease the meeting.
Right. Technically, we will. You're moving to what time?
11:10.
11:10. Have a seconder.
Oh.
Rebecca. Was in favour? Against?
Oh, it's going to move 12 o'clock. I'm away.
So Community Service Awards 18.2. Councillor Rubin, you still happy to move that way?
For the point 1, yeah.
Point 1. Do we have a second for part 1?
Yes.
Thank you. All those in favour? Taking liberties. Against? It's carried unanimously. Parts 2.